Chapter 31, Little Phoenix. A meter-tall mountain of documents filled 3 office desks. The entire room is stuffy and unbearable. A little lass and her 2 helpers were busy in work while moving between the desks. The overly tall mountain of documents made it such that no silhouette of anyone could be seen, only sounds of screaming, footsteps and the scribbling of pen on paper could be heard. This was my first impression when I walked into the office of the city lord. On one side of the wall, bamboo swords, tapecopter, gamaku and many different types of toys were scattered over the floor with a thick layer of dust over them. Looks like Adam hasn't been to this room for a while. Tapecopter, greater than Darman's helicopter, while gamaku is a game like tic-tac-toe except you have a much big board and you are supposed to link 5. Truthfully, to be capable of turning the office into a game room, he is a masterpiece among city lords. Annie is 1.7 meters and considered pretty tall for females using human standards. But right now, she resembles a dwarf student stuck in front of a desk. Looking from the front, only the documents and book can be seen. A thick black eyes circle is on her face. Due to being overly busy in her fight with the sea of documents, she wasn't even aware of my arrival. Walking there, I signaled to stop the helper that was going to call Annie and picked up a few random documents to take a look. The proposal for the reparations of the municipal facilities that were destroyed during the chaos in the 7th to 9th Street, 3 proposals to finish the drainage system before the rainy season and the settlement of the 4 new tribes in the city. Lord Womans, this is Lord Margaret's will. All of the B-class and above files of the Internal Affairs Bureau must be looked through by Miss Annie for her opinions for the matter before passing to Lord Margaret to give her opinions. Then, it would be passed back to Miss Annie to look through before going through with it. That is to say, every file, before any documents are finalized for actions to be carried out, Annie must deal with it once before Margaret gives her own opinion on how the matter should be dealt with. Then, it is passed to Annie for her to finalize the decision, so she has to look through it twice. This is literally teaching her step by step. I silently sighed. Looks like Margaret really decided to wash her hands clean of these. That's why she's using this kind of fill up the holes kind of teaching method. She is hoping that Annie could quickly grow to be capable of independently dealing with governance. Is that how you Internal Affairs Bureau work? All of the documents must be personally looked over and signed by Margaret? Individually dealing with all of the governance tasks? After receiving the other party's answer as though it was something incredible, I looked at the incredible mountain of documents and couldn't help clicking my tongue in amazement. The entire population of Sulphur Mountain City is near 3 million. Just thinking about it and you would know that there is an astronomical amount of work to deal with, but to look over each and every one of it, I can finally understand why Margaret rarely comes out. It is fortunate that Margaret is an immortal who basically needs no sleep. But this kind of method to deal with matters of governance is too primitive. It is just like how ancient kings use only their wisdom and knowledge to make judgment. An immortal who don't need rest and is forever rational could perhaps achieve it, but for humans, the mountain of files here might even only be accumulation from a day or 2. If we were to leave everything to the city lord to handle, she would probably have totally no free time at me. My job is to create a qualified city lord and not a lunatic who is crushed by work. Thus, I coughed lightly to signal my presence to the city lord trainee. Annie, do you know what is the essence of governance? What is the essence of governance? To make everyone contented with life and work. To make utopia into reality. To let all the race and tribes live harmoniously? No. It is not that complicated. Governance is just working within a fixed system. Ideals and other things can't be achieved through simply governance means. But governance isn't that easy as well. A gap in the administrative organs could result in the workings of the city to stop, and an overly inefficient governing body would result in great discontent against the government. It is indeed an existence that no city can go without. As the city lord, I will try my best to make everyone happy. Don't think too much with that small brain of yours. I'm just asking you the essence of governance. Forget it, I'll just tell you directly. Anyway, you really need a rest right now. I pulled the lass to one side and indicated the helpers to bring some tea over. The lass's face was a little sunken and without a hint of liveliness. The fiery red hair lost much of the luster it used to have. She seems to be avoiding my gaze, afraid that I would reprimand her. Shaking my head, I can roughly guess what has happened. Margaret is an impatient perfectionist who would always entrust tasks to her subordinates according to her own abilities. If I can do it, why can't you? Don't try to reason with me. Hypothetical situations are meaningless. These kinds of words are her catchphrase. But in reality, as a saint that is recognized as the mobile library, coupled with her identity as an immortal who has no limits to her stamina, how can ordinary people keep up with her pace? As Adam's disciple, Annie's combat talent and her physical body is excellent, but for intelligence. For a pure warrior, intelligence can be said to be the most useless stat. Adam, that rascal, only has 9 points in intelligence. The intelligence here refers to the main stat of a mage. Normal people have 10 points. The basic stats in this novel is very hard to be improved, but he still gets by day to day happily. According to my system, Annie has 11 points in intelligence, making her much better than her dumb father. But if she were to go by Margaret's 26 point in intelligence standards in learning, she would be driven mad by just learning by the standards of a 13 point, needless to say 26. Somehow, I seem to see how the Internal Affairs Bureau ended up being her personal organization. She probably couldn't stand those intelligence lacking, inefficient and slow subordinates of hers, thus she took on the burden of doing everything. In the end, she got used to it and decided to just do it all by herself. This kind of person would probably be considered a sage king in ancient times. But their fatal flaw is that it would be difficult for their successor to cope. After all, you can't expect the son and grandson of a sage king to be an indefatigable and wise sage king as well. Hey, as expected of an immortal, to think that this kind of workload won't tire her to death. Annie, don't take Margaret's scolding to heart. Her way of teaching really isn't reliable. In the past, Elisa and Kale almost got played to death by her, and furthermore, they are mages. Hearing this, the young lady started to whimper and instead, shakes her head vehemently. Big sister Margaret didn't scold me, she is just very disappointed. Annie feels useless. Annie is really useless. Annie doesn't have the confidence to become a good city lord anymore. The tears of the young lady fall down drop by drop onto the floor. Looks like Margaret's cold gaze when she's disappointment and her action of walking away silently while shaking her head afterwards had left a deep wound in her heart. This kind of silent resignation, this kind of disappointment that comes straight from the heart, it hurts the other party more than any other sharp-edged sarcasm, making the other party start to doubt their own capabilities and intelligence. Why am I so clear of that? In the past, when her lessons aren't going as ideal as I hoped, Elisa would be very depressed over it and even secretly use me to vent her frustration. Although I was the first one to use that technique to hurt Margaret. HMPH, blame it on her lack of skills in chess, acting too smug despite being so inflexible in her thinking. Alright, you need to find the one who tied the knot to solve the knot. I finally comprehend why Margaret said that I must come visit Annie today. She must have been subconsciously aware that she used that technique to drive Annie to tears, but had no idea how to resolve the situation. Ha, stop crying, let Uncle Bones teach you. Actually, Margaret's way of doing things is a mistake by itself. It is normal that you aren't able to do it her way. On the other hand, it would be troublesome if you really learn it her way. Annie's eyes widen, her eyes spelling incomprehension. Actually, governance isn't that complicated. Its essence is just to solve problems. That's right, governance is just a means to solve troubles and problems. Yes, governance is just the act of solving problems, and the Internal Affairs Bureau is an organization catered specially to solving problems. This job isn't within the range of job scope, please direct it to our superior to deal with it. Equals bro. This trouble is too big for us to deal with, talk to our boss instead. This plan should be carried out, but the cost involved is too high and we are unable to fulfill the requirements currently, so it is placed on hold temporarily. Equals bro, what you said is excellent and we want to do it too. But, our treasury doesn't have any money, so just leave it first. We understand your difficulties, but this job concerns the privacy of others, so it isn't convenient for our department to intervene. Please settle it internally. Equals idiot, don't waste my manpower. It is such a small matter, so deal with it yourself. What is the point of saying it so complicated and kindly? The main goal of governance is to settle the problems and troubles that turn up in daily life or development, allowing most of the population to lead stable lives. The book I personally wrote, The Art of Language, Step-by-Step Guide to Deal with Complaints and Resolve Arguments, also known as The True Meaning Behind Official Dialect Manual, has been well received, and it significantly improved the governing efficiency of the judiciary. The citizens interviewed even said that even though I didn't understand what they were saying, but it sounds impressive. It feels like my opinions are respected, but the side effect to that is that people are shooting me weird gazes, and I even see people flipping the book while listening to me talk. In reality, you all have underestimated Adam, that 9-point intelligence dumbass. Actually, in my eyes, I find him an excellent city lord. Hearing that, Annie raises her head in shock with disbelief on her face. These days, she has heard countless complaints against her surrogate father, but everyone says that it is because of big sister Margaret helping out. That's why he can become a good city lord. If he could take on more responsibilities, everyone's job would be easier and life would be more. Then Sulphur Mountain City would not be too far from its doomsday. Yes, he does depend on Margaret to deal with most of his governing affairs, but even if Margaret isn't here, he could have got other people to deal with it for him. Despite the lowered efficiency, his greatest strength is that he knows how to use others and trust them. After entrusting the matter to others, he won't interfere and create trouble. You are the city lord, not the head of Internal Affairs Bureau. What you need to find people who can solve problems for you and dump it all on them, not to solve it yourself. Annie seems to be about to say something, but I interrupted her. Look, he entrusted affairs of the legal system to me, Internal Affairs Bureau to Margaret, and the troublesome civilian problem to the Public Council. No matter how it went, at least the city is the fastest developing one in the underground world, and winners don't have to be criticized. Besides, city lords also have their own responsibility, and that is much more important than these boring matters on governance. Responsibility of a city lord? Yes, you might feel that Adam is obviously lazing around, but the citizens still respect him a lot. That is because he is fulfilling his main duty as the city lord. Main duty of a city lord? After savoring these words, she recalls the daily routine of her father, and suddenly, sparks appear in both her eyes, and the young lady found her own shine again. Protecting everyone, right? So as to let everyone live peacefully in this chaotic underground world? I smile and nod my head. Yes, protecting everyone and be the one that leads everyone into the future, allowing everyone to be able to have good expectations for the future. This is the true job of a city lord. As for the other meddlesome affairs, find a few fellows with good head and dump it on them. If they screw it up, just sack them and find someone to replace them. There is bound to be someone suitable. In this chaotic underground world, military might is a must, and you should quite talented in this aspect. Being Sulphur Mountain City, no, the entire underground world's youngest quasi-legend. Hearing my words, Annie nods her head forcefully after finally finding her strengths. In my eyes, it looks like a cute dog that was happy and satisfied after finally finding its own worth. Godfather says that I'm just a step away from legend rank. I can enter legend mid-phase right after I accept the Phoenix Heart at the end of the inheritance. Afterwards, I would be able to attain Saint rank within 30 years. Wow, this speed is really inconceivable. Even I am stunned by this astonishing speed. The average age of normal legends is past 100, and Danny isn't even 20 yet. I was also past 100 when I first got to Saint rank. But, to be smiling so happily, she probably doesn't know what is the Phoenix Heart. Shaking my head, I decided not to interfere as it is their family affair. I should not be the one to say such things. And now, my goal is only to complete the main storyline quest and groom Annie into a competent city lord. After 2 days, follow me to the Underground Alliance. I will teach you about the other job of a city lord. How to use the carrot and stick approach to maximize the gains in a negotiation, but since it is an underground city, I'm afraid that I can only teach you about the stick. Anyway, the goal of this trip is to show our might, so there will be many chance for you to strike out on the way. I will also be bringing the city's biggest troublemakers like the Bar Brothers, Storm Eagle, and the other living treasures of my subordinates. You just have to responsible for giving a tough face on the surface and leave the rest to me. We're going to play big and overturn the entire Underground Alliance. Adam's soul imprint is the undying phoenix, making him suited for long battles. As long as you are unable to kill him in a single go, he will absorb the damage and the phoenix's cradle will become stronger and stronger before exploding in one go. It might be an inheritance, but you might not be suited to his fighting style. I feel that you are more suited for an offensive style that suppresses the opponent right from the start. This requires battle experience, so give it your best in the fight with the Underground Alliance. TL, in Chinese mythology, the more damage, grievance etc. a phoenix goes through during its cradle stage before its, the more magnificent and stronger it would be when reborn. She was indeed still like a little girl on the inside. She would tighten her will and do the governing affairs she hated with a crying face, but when you start the topic of something she likes, she would immediately become very energetic and enthusiastic. Governance? This is simple, isn't it? Just solving problems? Find a few merchants that are good at financing and let them do the accounting. Just create a new department in the Internal Affairs Bureau and call it the Finance Department. As for the building of public amenities, we can look for miners, architects and building companies. But, we must first strip them of their self-interest. Right, we could call it the Infrastructure Department. Don't follow Margaret's footsteps, it is too tiring. You just have to lay out the backbone and choose people suitable. If they can't do it well, just change the people on the job. To protect the city in the future, you have to devote much of your attention into training. I would like to hear of the heroics if the new generation of Red Lotus hero. Don't panic, you are already ahead of that dumbass by a lot. The Adam back then was much more useless than you. He can't be any more silly. The first time he tried to settle other people's feud, he actually. Slowly, Annie, who have not slept for 2 days and just undergo a great fluctuation in emotions, actually fell asleep on me while listening to me speak. Looking at the deeply asleep young lady who was snoring lightly, I can't help but reminisce the past. Humans are really a unique life being. Yesterday, she was still a snotty brat, but in a turn of an eye, she's already an adult today. Back then, when Adam brought Annie home, she was so small, but now, not mentioning that she is already physically matured, she is already intending to take on the heavy responsibilities that her elder left her with. Seeing the black circles below Annie's eyes, I felt a little resentment towards Margaret. Seriously, she left Adam to be so carefree yet treats Annie so strictly. Adam too, Phoenix heart, it is the heart of the Phoenix. Such a heavy responsibility, do you think she will be able to shoulder the truth? Uncle Bones, Big Sister Margaret, Father. Suddenly, the tears seep out from the sleeping young lady as she calls out our names. Don't go. Don't abandon Annie. Annie will be obedient. The dream of the tragedy made my outstretched hand stop in midair. I never said that I was leaving, and even more so, Margaret and Adam never mentioned that the current city lord was going to die. But it looks like we underestimated this seemingly talkative and sloppy young lady. It was after a long pause then did I carefully wipe away her tears and caress her hair. That apologetic mumble was something I couldn't even hear clearly myself. I'm sorry, little Annie. Adults are all selfish. We are a bunch of selfish jerks. But what I didn't know was that in the city lord residence, 2 people were speaking the exact same words as me. I knew that Roland could solve the problem. Stop blaming yourself, Margaret. Little Annie is actually much stronger than we think she is. Stop crying, Margaret. This isn't like you. If you can't bear to leave her, you still can choose to stay. That's right, the one who was silently whimpering at the corner isn't Annie who was hurt unintentionally, but the one who asked for my help. Due to being too worried, she went against her principles of listening in, the perpetually calm Saint Lord Margaret. Hearing the words of the heartless man, fire of anger started burning in the eyes of Margaret, who still had tears on the side of her cheeks. You also could have chosen not to die. Then everything would be solved. You selfish bastard. If looks could kill, Adam would have been pierced by thousands of arrows. Yeah? Who asked us to all be selfish adults? It's just that we are all apologetic to little Annie. Besides, don't be worried about it so early. You're laughing? You. Calm down, no matter what, I am still Annie's father. There is no reason why I wouldn't know what she wants and needs the most. Relax, I have it all planned out. It would definitely be a happy ending, a happy ending. I will believe you once more, the final time. You selfish bastard. The saint abandons her image and grinds her teeth while roaring furiously. Chapter 32, Lisa. When I finally leave the city lord residence, it is already quite late, but I really don't feel like returning to the watchroom. Watchroom? Yes, Lich Roland is still under custody in the watchroom for causing that huge chaos, and he only sneaked out just now. The planning of a group nude run may not have broken any of the laws and really couldn't be considered a crime, but locking them up for 3 to 5 days for them to reflect over their actions is a must. I had summoned a skeleton to put my usual accessories, clothes, and cast some magic on him to fake a lich that is sleeping while I ran out myself. If it was other days, I had to rush back to not get noticed. After all, dark elves are sensitive to magic and it wouldn't be hard for them to notice the difference while patrolling. But now, they didn't have the time to bother with that obedient lich at that corner. The reason? That is because they are busy, extremely busy. To tell the story, I must start from where my sin begun. The month ban on engineering. From the perspective of purifying Sulphur Mountain City's culture, the effects of the ban could be said to be perfect. After those damn living time bombs, dwarves and goblins, were sent into the watchroom, the crime rate of the entire Sulphur Mountain City and the cases reported went down by 3% instantly. There isn't even a single explosion last night. But, when the town security knights delightedly slept a peaceful night, they realized that it was, in fact, the start of a nightmare. What is worse than a trouble that cannot be settled is when multiple troubles come together. When the many engineers in the watchroom started to unite, when the flag for the first Sulphur Mountain City Engineering Conference was hailed, even the worldly experienced me and my companions were shocked. The goblin engineers discussed their experiences of exploding bombs and being exploded on, while the goblins talked about all kinds of different unique ways to thinking and methods. Alright, they were mainly different kinds of suicide methods. What's more is that despite being body checked to be clean, in the intense boredom, the dwarves and the goblins were even discussing vehemently about the product of the combination of the two types of engineering study. Initially, I was still merely inciting the flames at one side. We could create a goblin shredder that is as big as a mountain. With just a chainsaw, it would be able to cut down the ancient war trees of high elves. Impossible. Will be extremely heavy. Child, why are you so lacking in imagination? You forgot that there is not only a master here. If we were to use the dwarf's electrical conduit and pressure regulator, not only will it not be too heavy, it always won't explode too fast. We can create a gigantic fire-spitting dragon machine, then color its head red. Like this, it would be 3 times faster. We could create a head that would continuously rotate, a screw saucer. We could use it to drill all the way to the surface. This way, we won't have to pay the fee for passing through the underground city guarding the route to the surface. But very quickly, I realized that the situation is getting out of hand. Their motivation was too strong. Once I mentioned the idea of combining techniques and new aspects that could be researched, as they were euphoric over the discussion, they actually started to work on it. No fire source? My shoe is a flint, capable to creating sparks by knocking with the surface. No spare parts? Hee hee, my little brother Yinku is a part-time fire mage, what does melting a few metal poles count to him? No gunpowder? Hee hee, I am a double master in both goblin alchemy and goblin engineering. Come, pick up that soap for me. No, I'm not a gay, I only want to use that soap and the animal fats in your lunch as ingredients. Look at my how I hand make glyceryl trinitrate. This is the ultimate skill that I learned from Sealman in the South Raws. After getting hold of this secret recipe, my mom never has to worry about my machine lacking fuel anymore. TL. Glyceryl trinitrate, also known as nitroglycerin, explodes from tremors. No fuse, catalyst and winder? Wait, let me strip. Hey, I really am not gay. Look, these clothes have been soaked in liquid hexogen, it could explode if I were to casually tear a cloth out. The goblin beside him looks at him in respect, the meaning being you are really a role model for the goblin's research spirit. You actually dare to wear this kind of thing on your body. By putting together these buttons, it forms the most basic equipment tool set. There is even wrench, chisel and vise. You want it? I'm not selling it. This is the birthday present that the smart Lich gave me. It is the symbol of our friendship. If you really want it that much, it is not like I can't part with it. It costs at least 30,000 gold coin. Touching his hairless chin proudly, The weather-beaten Jinya.bar smiles at me and gives me a thumbs up. Looking at the bar brothers who, using their superior skills, vaguely became the leader of the crowd, watching how they passionately pluck out the metal poles and melted it to make spare parts, using soap and animal fats to create explosive, I feel so regretful that my intestines are turning blue. That is if I still have intestine. I swear that when I get out, I must find a reason to throw back all back in again. The crime? If I'm not wrong, if they were to continue on this path, there will be one a while later. Fine, in order not to see the watchroom which was built with taxes by the citizens get blasted to the sky, and more importantly, to not get blasted into the sky, I decisively called for support. Elisa, go and report to the town security headquarters. Say that the bunch of goblins in the watchroom are creating a gigantic bomb that can destroy the entire city. Alright, what is left is easy. Once the town security arrive, they will suppress this bunch of lawless engineers with the guards of the watchroom. But this was only the beginning. Once the fire of the pursuit of knowledge has been ignited, then it can never be extinguished. Goblin Master Engineer Jinya.bar. They only changed from a surface collaboration into an underground collusion. All kinds of engineering blueprints fly around like underground intelligence, with just one mutual look in the eye. They are able to transfer information. Furthermore, the idea of Sulphur Mountain City Master Engineer Collaboration Project had been somehow spread to the outside. Afterwards, many engineer masters from the outside began to stir up trouble to look for a chance to join this grand meeting, and they were even willing to offer their precious spare parts as an entrance fee. The final result is that when the guards turn around, clink 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 clink, they start to get to work, but the moment the guards' eyes are on them, they start to whistle and act innocent. Helpless, the town security could only gather all their force to stare at all of them to stop their actions. Naturally, the other criminals would then have it easy, and I also took this opportunity to sneak out to see Annie. Cough. End of the recollection. Right now, the watchroom is like the entrance to a volcano, ready to cause a ruckus at any time. The word ruckus, perhaps, it would be more appropriate to swap it with explode. A gentleman won't station itself under an unsteady wall. Besides, I never thought that I am a gentleman who abide by morals and ethics, and even more so, wouldn't take the initiative to enjoy an explosion. Then, before they get out of control and things start exploding, I better go somewhere else to spend my time. Let's go visit Little Red. But unexpectedly, through communications, I got the news from her underlings that she wasn't at home. She suffered the greatest indignant loss in her entire life this time. She must be fuming. Right now, if she isn't looking for someone to fight with, she could only be there. As expected, when I arrived at the Central District's biggest bar, Fiery Red Rose, just as I was walking into the room we often frequent, I could hear a familiar voice coming from within. Roland, accompany me for a drink. Why, changing into human form and drinking so gloomily by yourself? Alcohol isn't good for wounds. Yes, not any different from an unmanageable teenage girl, Little Red's, who was also in her rebellious phase. Favorite hobby is drinking and fighting. Now that there aren't any suitable opponents for her fight, she could only look for a place to drink. HMPH, that is a ban which only you fragile humans need. For me, drinking a little alcohol can help me numb the pain and sleep more comfortably. Pulling apart the curtains, a black-haired ravishing lady was hugging a wooden barrel and drinking directly from it. Furthermore, it was one with extremely high alcohol content made for the dwarves. Her long black hair was as smooth as silk, and her crescent eyebrows gave her additional femininity. She has a tall figure, and her tight leather shirt showcased the entirety of her perfect figure. Her slender arms are white like snow, and her features had a refreshing taste to it. Her green nails had a hint of blood color to it. Just looking from outer appearance, she feels like a lady from a family of scholars. There is an eye patch on her left eye, and there were quite a lot of bandages on her body. Her entire body was filled with the smell of medicated wine, making her seem delicate. But, the moment she opens her eyes, no one would treat her like a weak lady. The wildness in those eyes of the beast. No, it should the gaze of the hunter on the top of the food chain evaluating its prey, making the weak feel like their life lies on a thread as they tremble in fear. Why, are you disappointed? Did you think that all-female red dragon would turn into a lolly dressed in red? Too naive, You think a gigantic dragon would like to turn into a little girl? A stereotypical view from those who watch too much night novels. Why? In the wilderness, a little girl with strong physical abilities suddenly appears. Despite the ground being full of dirt, her clothes are totally spotless. Even a fool would know that something is amiss. TL, night novels sort of refers to story of a knight saving a princess, etc. All these kind of nice delusions, fairy tales. Cough. Back then, this female dragon really read too many night novels and she intended to sneak into our adventuring team just like that to start on an epic adventure. Unfortunately, we seen through her right from the start. Just that, we were happy to have another strong fighter and a lucky charm, so why would we expose it? Instead, we tried our best to pretend to be ignorant of it as we raised both of our hands to warmly welcome this legend-rank female berserker and fire matriarchy. In the end, she showed her true form due to an accident, but facing the rest of us who were calm and obviously looked like we knew the truth long ago, she pressured us into telling her what went wrong with her disguise. However, that answer became the shame of her life and her greatest dark history. Strength requires time to build up. A legend rank that looks around 10 years old. After excluding several possibilities, the disguise of some other strong race becomes the most probable answer. And the one who can most possibly do this kind of thing should be the dragon race. This is how the cold-faced Margaret explained. Back then, she was still a normal human mage who was sharp with her tongue but soft in her heart. She was still rather worried about Little Red's pride. I guess it is your equipment and weapons. Looking at your Spider Queen Mage Hunter's spider thread skirt, if you were to put it in the market, you should be able to earn enough to buy a small city. Considering the tender personality and gentlemanly attitude a holy knight should portray, I thought that I should consider her pride at a time like this. So, I squeezed my brain juice and tried my best to find a subtle flaw in her disguise and mentions it smiling. Dumbass Little Red, the first time we met, you tackled an entire week of our ration at one go, causing us to have to go hunt to top up on our ration. Do you think a human can eat that much? HMPH, you caused to go on a diet for an entire night. Fine, the thief Lisa. Grant was still harboring a grudge over her hunger that night. Ha ha ha, all of you fools, you only realized it this late. I knew it at first glance. Wasn't Little Red reading a book then, the popular night novel My Dragon Princess from the Stars? Isn't it a story about how a dragon turned into a young girl to roam the human world, and even started a romance with a human? To think you all failed to see through such an obvious flaw. Haha, to think you all always call me a fool. I think that you all are the fools instead. Ah. This is, indeed, it is that dumb Adam. After that, we spent a long time before finding back the dumb hero who was sent several miles flying from a punch from the embarrassed and angry Little Red. At this point in time, the cute lolly dragon princess disappeared and replacing her is a mature version Big Sister Dragon. But, this actually suits her personality quite a bit. Thus, even though the dragon tribe could change the age and race they change into, the transmogrification spell allows them to choose from elf and human, but their outer appearance will not change. She always chose this look. As for the red dress, that was real. Normally, when a dragon transmogrifies, they like to choose clothes that are close to their skin color. Little Red likes red color, but the problem is, Adam, that fellow is also dressed in red. Furthermore, that fellow always go around causing trouble and being an idiot. If she were to be dressed in the same clothes as him, won't she be treated as his comrade? There isn't a person who wants to be placed in the same category as an idiot. Back then, Little Red said it like that. It definitely isn't me trying to slander him. What are you thinking about? Come and help me cook the meat. I remember that you were the best at cooking meat back then in our team. Let me see if your skills have deteriorated since then. You still remember, huh? Yes, the one who knows that I am the leader of the team, Holy Nitrolo, on the surface, is only Little Red, ancient red dragon in Smee's use. The method and angle how the dragons of the golden race look at others is different from mortals. In the face of the dragon eyes which sees into one's soul, there wasn't a chance I could keep it from her in the start. Just that, our relationship, rather than companions, it would be more suited to say that it is accomplices. Sometimes, it is better to act ignorant for some things than to expose it and cause awkwardness in the relationship. Right now, while grilling my meat, I scatter my secretly made spices, The main ingredients are cumin and chili powder. At the same time, there are materials required for casting a smoke-related magic, but before I can even brush oil on the meat, she snatches it over, eats it in a mouthful and swallows it the next moment. She seems to be having great fun eating it. This time, I made you suffer indignantly. I will help you to get back at them. Little Red indeed suffered a lot this time. If it wasn't for some reasons, don't even mention losing, she wouldn't even be injured. She is just reluctant to accept her loss. What is the troublesome part about the dragon tribe? Strong physical abilities, outstanding talent in magic? That isn't it. What makes them hard to deal with is their wings. They can fly. The dragon tribe are the favored ones of the sky. Their flying techniques are outstanding, and infant dragons can use magic to help them levitate. Grown dragons can fly as they please, and for an ancient dragon like Little Red, flying is as natural as breathing to her. In fact, she can even break the laws of physics and truly fly as she please in the sky without using her wings. The usual strategy that dragons use to deal with enemies is suddenly swiping down from the clouds, and even before the enemy can react, they would spit their dragon breath and use magic to destroy their opponents. Then, before the enemy starts retaliate, they start flying upwards and leaves the field. This fighting strategy may sound shameless, but it is highly difficult to deal with. If you wish to slay a dragon, please first think of a method to make the dragon land on the ground. Thus, even supreme empires wouldn't casually offend the dragon tribe. After all, no one would wish for a fire to break out in their capital once every 2 days, yet being unable to track down the culprit. The high mobility of the dragon tribe is what that makes them extremely difficult to deal with. 90% of those successful dragon hunts is because the dragon was blocked in their own lair, or that they had fell into some kind of trap. For a dragon in the open, even if they are unable to defeat you, they can definitely escape, and when they come back to hunt you for revenge, it would be difficult to cope with it. This time, the reason why Little Red is injured so badly is because Adam and Margaret is behind her, causing her to be unable to move. So, she can only stand there and get beaten up like a sandbag. To be treated by others like a fixed punching bag, this kind of insult would nationally make the proud Little Red feel indignant and displeasure. When she heard that I would help her get back at them, Little Red stunned for a moment, before picking the wooden barrel by the side and gulps down the alcohol. Cough cough. But as she drank in a hurry, this stupid dragon accidentally choked. I quickly helped her to pat her back. No thanks. I will get back at them myself. I will find Molly personally, so don't interfere. I shake my head. Knowing her reluctance to admit defeat, I have expected her to give such an answer. However, Little Red's individual abilities are slightly above that of Dragon Empress Molly. Otherwise, that old granny would have long appeared to clean her household. After all, Little Red is one of the few existences that could threaten her position as the Dragon Empress. Let's go and get back at them together. I have sustained quite a bit of loss this time as well. Just as I expected, when I started to talk about the trip and a plan to cause trouble, Little Red, who only fears a lack of chaos in the world and was looking for an outlet to vent her stress, agrees happily. Just that, after I finished speaking, she looks at me playfully. Is Lisa still doing fine? What are you talking about? Oh, Elisa? Her tongue is still as venomous as always. It is a pity she chose to learn from Margaret. She is becoming more and more difficult to deal with nowadays. Just 2 days ago, she caused me to be arrested into the watchroom. Back then, it was really a mistake to pick her up. Stop playing the fool. You know that my dragon eyes peek into the soul. Elisa is Lisa, right? The final member in our team. The thief then, whose goal was to become a billionaire, Lisa. Grant, whom the fool Adam had a crush on for half his life. Elisa is just Lisa with a letter E in front which emphasizes the word behind. Such a simple word game, I reckon only that fool Adam can't see through it. When did you see through it? From the moment you brought that half-demon girl back, which is right from the start. You aren't any better than me. Your disguises still have a lot of flaws to them. However, you sure are impressive. I clearly remember that Lisa is dead and even her soul has returned back to the source. Wait, half-demon, you didn't go to the River of the Dead to find her back, did you? Yes, the human Lisa is already dead. The Elisa now is a brand new life and soul. You can say that Lisa is Lisa, but isn't Lisa at the same time? Looking at the interest in Little Red, my face bitters. Looks like it's come to a time to come clean with things that had happened then. Difficult chapter to translate, too many technical words to convert and physical description which I am really bad at. Chapter 33, Truth in the Half-Demon. The pale yellow flame of the oil lamp dances along with the wind. Not too far away in the hall, the singing of bards could be heard. The wind brings along with it the sweet and fragrant scent of alcohol, the sound of the snoring of drunkards and the sound of chattering. This atmosphere really makes one drunk on it, and it feels that it would be a good place to reminisce their memories. Dang! Throwing out an enchanted gold coin out, it forms an invisible barrier that blocks off all possible spying. Some things had to be accounted for. Then, where should I start from? Then let's start with the usual bomb, the accursed chaos and the heartless order which threw all races and life forms into its eternal war. Just like what was said before, this war has no end. Then, why does it have no end? Going by logic, a thing like war should stop when both parties suffer losses beyond a certain acceptable range. To explain that, we have to start from the origin, life, death and the never-ending reincarnation. I also mentioned before that every life, after their departure, if they believe in the gods of order, their soul would be guided to the pillar of heaven and follow it all the way up to the heavenly realm where the gods of order dwell. They would then become a devotee who serves as a source of faith for the gods, or become a god envoy or god attendant who fights for them. Among them, the strongest are the different type of war angels. Basically, when you believe in a certain god, you become a member of his heavenly realm. Devotees are the lowest tier existence in the heavenly realm. Their only job is to pray continuously to provide the power of faith of the gods. Then, when a devotee is unable to provide any more faith, they would be abandoned to send back into the cycle of transmigration. As for the Chaos faction, it is technically the same thing, just that, compared to using the honor and embrace of divinity to guide the pure souls into heaven that is free of worries, the means of the Chaos Abyss are much more violent. The endless river Styx passes through countless dimensions, and using the words of the Order faction, the cursed souls of the sinners will suffer the pain of the corrosion of their souls for eternity. In reality, the nature of souls tends towards chaos, and any souls that don't believe in the gods of order would fall into the river Styx after their death. However, because souls that tend towards chaos are normally selfish and reckless, calling them sinners aren't that wrong as well. To continue on, the souls of those who died in the Chaos faction would follow the flow of river Styx through countless worlds and dimensions. If the soul is attracted by the world's laws, then it would climb to shore, returning back to life. For example, if they were to climb onto the shore of the main battlefield of the Eternal War, the 10,000 Abyss Plains, then, the evolution of the new soul would most probably be a bloodthirsty battle demon. If they climb up on a rage fire-scorched plains full of black chaos inferno, then the new soul would most probably become a fire elemental demon, and the terminal of their evolution would probably be the strong fire demon Balrog. Of course, there are also worlds and dimensions that tend towards the good. Quite a lot of swindlers, immoral businessmen and thieves, who fail to steal anything, reincarnate into the cunning and evil but promise-keeping devils. On the other hand, the souls of serial killers, burglars and different type of violent criminals reincarnate into demons who are said to be the incarnation of chaos itself. In reality, before climbing to shore, the river Styx would have already completed the transmigration between life and death. The demons and devils who climb onto shore are a brand new life which requires the consumption of other life for a living. The survival of the fittest is the only rule, and evolving to become stronger before a predator beyond their means appears their only means of survival. The demons and devils who climb up from the river Styx have already lost their memories from the time when they were mortals. The only thing on their empty brain is the primitive consume and evolve. Every demon who have evolved to a certain level would have already consumed countless of their brethren. Talking to them about order, the beauty of peace and cooperating for survival is equal to talking to a criminal, who depends on fighting and stealing to become influential. About the harmony of society and helping others is a joy. Isn't that basically denying the value of their entire existence? Even if the demons can evolve into a demon nobility, and after grasping their true name, they are able to regain the memories when they are immortal, but they already have an entire new set of values for the world, and their previous memories would probably be like how mortals view themselves as the main character of a certain novel or movie. It won't have much of an effect on their personality, and the new experience and knowledge could instead make them more cunning and difficult to deal with. Even the stronger fire demon Balrogs, who are able to slay a dragon individually, are only a normal member of the demons. A demon nobility, even if it is the weakest baron, is still an existence that is able to suppress a fire demon Balrog with just a single hand. It is said that their nobility is granted by the goddess of chaos and the chaos abyss itself. For example, the demon prince, which is slightly higher ranked than a demon duke, may seem like nothing much, but in actuality, it is almost equal to the godson of the goddess of chaos and is an existence equal to the main god of the Order faction. Fortunately, the demon nobles, due to their great strength, are unable to head to the Ike continent normally. Even if they were to send an incarnation down, it would normally be surrounded and destroyed by the god envoys and incarnations of the Order gods. Of course, not every soul that tends towards chaos would become demons. A large portion of souls would find themselves being unable to climb to shore, and only when the river Styx reaches the very end of the chaos abyss can they be reincarnated. Alright, since if there is life, there will be death. The souls of the dead are constantly reincarnated to become new soldiers for both faction. Naturally, the eternal war would then be never-ending. These are all laws of the world, similar to how the sun is going to rise. The seawater is salty, kind of common knowledge. But 100 years ago, a man tried to break this rule. He tried to make the sun never rise again. He tried to make all the living die and build a country for the dead. He tried to make the holy light disappear for good. He is Lord Yang. Yes, the me who was a frenzied shinobi back then. Cough. Since it is a dark history, so I will speak less about it. No matter how I try to refute it, Lisa did die from my army, to the hands of one of my most capable 4 heavenly kings, Bone Dragon Queen Grey. Sin, which is equivalent to dying in my hands. I, who was at my pinnacle then, couldn't accept the fact that I accidentally killed one of my companions. So, I tried to challenge the common sense of the world and alter life and death. To the me then, if it was just raising someone up to become an undead, they would still be dead, making the act meaningless. If I were to want to revive someone, then it must be a revival true to the word. The souls of the dead will lose their memory and everything else in the river Styx. But this requires time. After all, even though the water of river Styx is fatal poison to any life, but for it to take effect swiftly, it must be drunk into the body. So, if I were to use divination magic to look for Lisa's soul and pull her out of river Styx before its water started taking effect and recreate a physical body for her. This isn't a theory that I came up with, but a classical joke that spread among the mages. This is because that despite being feasible theoretically, but the river Styx can corrode any soul that it comes into contact with. Since it can't be touched, so how can one pull a soul away from it? Even the great demons who can use secret methods to gather the water from river Styx to create medicine dare not touch the river Styx directly. They definitely have no wish to start evolving from the lowest demons again. Falling into the river Styx is also considered one of the most cruel curses in the world of demons. However, this concept would have to be corrected. River Styx is the river of souls in this world and also the creator of all living beings. Indeed, she can make any souls from this world sink within its depths, but what if the soul doesn't belong to her and comes from another world? For example, a transcender from a foreign world. Back then, I was also dripping with cold sweat. Fortunately, my purely theoretical guesses were correct. But, reality has also proven that this drop of fortune is the start of greater misfortune. You are insane. You are challenging the order which all of the gods have acknowledged. You are provoking the dignity of both the malevolent gods of chaos and the gods of order. The gigantic dragon's shock and roar was just beside my ear. What can I say other than nodding my head bitterly? Yes, now that I recall it, I was rather crazy back then. I must really be mad to try to totally break the boundary between the living and the dead. If it happens once, then it can happen again. If the dead aren't reincarnated successfully, then what can the order and chaos continue fighting with? Both parties definitely won't allow me to continue causing any more havoc. Little Red drinks a large mouthful of alcohol. Who did you meet? The descent of a true god? If it is just an incarnation, Then you should be able to escape even if you can't defeat him. Death God Ayor, the very first undead, the most ancient god. Pada. The alcohol bottle immediately shatters on the floor as the fragrance of the alcohol leaks out. Ancient red dragon in Smee's use widens her mouth, allowing the alcohol to flow freely down from her mouth. That kind of idiotic look is really rarely seen. Hey, image. If this silly look of yours were to be leaked, then how will you marry in the future? I tried to warn her kindly, but I ended getting pulled up by her and she stares directly at my eyes. You stop joking. In the million years of history of our dragon tribe, that man has only made a move thrice and his opponents were all true gods. Do you think that you are really amazing? You are only a semi-god undead emperor of recent times. There are much more of those in ancient times. You totally lack the qualifications to make that man move. The questioning words come out one by one. Both of her dragon eyes were filled with disbelief and suspicion. I am not joking. It really is Ayor, the most ancient god. The super old senior who once followed the goddess of chaos and goddess of order, the oldest king of the ancestors of devils, the mountainous human tribe and the oldest death god who granted intelligence to all undead. Then why are you still here prancing about? I don't think that a semi-god like you would be able to escape from his hands. The true gods who he has set his eyes upon have all fallen, and you, who is just a semi-god undead emperor, what do you have for you to still be here? Remembering the gray figure that represents death itself, the blood rose colored ring on that pale white finger, I couldn't help but shiver. I also felt that it was a miracle that my soul hasn't disintegrated yet. Now that I recall, Death God Ayor never returns the prayers of the undead. Perhaps, he is a representation of death itself. Or maybe, that is his concept of existence and his obligation is to maintain the order in death itself, that is to say, as long as nothing interferes with the river Styx and the souls of order from returning to their gods, then he would definitely not make a move. Back then, I tried to interfere with the river Styx, which was as good as stepping on his boundaries. It was really a suicidal move. Obligation, greater than actually means his job as a god. All gods of order has a specific role. For example, moon goddess, the moon would be her concept of existence and the obligation would be everything related to the moon. This word is going to appear quite many times further in the novel. I unconsciously sipped a mouthful of alcohol but ended up looking frustrated at the alcohol dripping down from my lower jaw, wetting my shirt. I shake my head and smiles helplessly. It was my worst defeat in this world. He only used an incarnation, which only struck once, and he managed to easily send me kneeling with my soul almost destroyed entirely. My rank went dropping frantically. Ever since then, I terminated the possibility of an undead becoming a true god, because he would have to defeat Death God Ayor. For countless years, the seat of Death God has never changed, showing that this was an impossible task. No wonder Adam and Margaret could defeat you back then. He had been taking it to heart and he suspects that you secretly went easy on it. I never expected that you were badly injured then. Since an undead empire cannot be built and the Demon King is destined for failure, so why not pass in the glory of defeating the Demon King to my brother? However, as my rank dropped frantically, flaws appeared in my initial plans. Margaret saw through my plans and I went from faking my death to almost really dying. I guess it could be considered the only accident. You haven't told me how you escaped from Death God Ayor. You are wondering why the undead empire cannot be built? It is actually pretty simple. From Ayor, I found out that the gods of order couldn't possibly allow the undead to replace all of the living. If so, the cycle of life and death would be broken. An undead kingdom which doesn't extend beyond half of the world is already the limits of what is acceptable to them. An irresistible brute force strikes on my brain and Little Red's word by word question thunders in my eardrum. I am asking you, how did you escape from Ayor? Stop changing the topic, and stop talking crap. The soul fire in my eye flickers and finally, I helplessly said the truth. I can't say it. I really am unable to say it. This is all for your sake. The dragon girl's head tilts and she pouts her mouth, her face filled with disdain. I can guess it all the same even if you don't say it out loud. It must be your specialty in spouting bullshit. Ayor, who doesn't belong to any faction of gods, is a well-known rebel. He is probably like you, unhappy with the current world, so you might have conspired some sinister plot with him and came to an agreement, such as to overthrow the current order. Woo. The words that come afterwards won't be said out anymore, as my bones were stuffed right into her mouth. After being assaulted suddenly, her black eyes were full of rage. Then, after seeming to have guessed something, the anger changed into shock before turning into panic and fear. I couldn't have hit the jackpot. Tell me that this isn't real. Lord Ayor, please spare me. I am still young and unwed yet. I haven't raised any small dragons and I don't want to be silenced. TL, to those who understand Chinese, silence, greater than he used a phrase? Which means to kill a dragon to silence it. Calm down, you don't know anything. Nothing at all. Why would Ayer come find you? You are just sitting here today chatting with me. You didn't guess anything at all, you didn't think of anything at all. Under my consolation and persuasion, she finally calms down after a long period of time. Remember it. I don't know anything at all. You didn't say anything as well. The dragon god above, I won't guess anything anymore. Don't say it, you really mustn't say it. I nod my head and wipe the cold sweat that doesn't exist. This lass, why is she so good at guessing randomly? She really has the ultimate crowbeak with a loose mouth. TL, crowbeak, greater than someone who make inauspicious remarks and ganks it, as in what that was said really happens, right? So what is the deal with Elisa? Why would Lord Ayor let her off? Since this is an obvious attempt at changing the topic, so why would I turn away such a good opportunity? While I was pursued by Ayor, I randomly transported Elisa to a faraway place. When I recovered my ability to move, it was already 3 days later. However, Elisa has already started her fight for survival within Rebel and was long corrupted by the laws of the dimension into a half-demon. What was left is that I settled her down, and afterwards, she was brought to Sulphur Mountain City, and you should know what happens after that. Half-demon? Shouldn't be. Normally, half-demons are offspring of demons, and when their bloodline finally awakens, they are able to undergo a ritual to awaken their demonic blood to gain strength. For Elisa, who hasn't converted from a dead to be corrupted into a half-demon half-human existence by the world's laws, it might seem to be not so different from normal half-demons, but in actuality, they are different down to the core. I hesitated for a moment. Based on her understanding of the laws, Little Red made her judgment. No wonder you said that she is Lisa, but at the same time, isn't Lisa as well? The original Lisa has already died, and the current Lisa should only be a fragment of her soul which was converted into a half-human half-demon. Really one of a kind in the entirety of Ike. Indeed, Ayer has also told me that a person is completely dead the moment they touch the river Styx. Those who climb to shore afterwards are newborn from the original material. Even now, the Chaos Abyss is still continuously calling for her soul, attempting to convert her completely into a demon. She came to shore on the rage fire-scorched plains, so if she were to be converted, she should be a fire element demon. So, I thought her ice magic, which was the nemesis of fire, so that she could resist the corruption coming from her core. You sure are dumb, ending up empty-handed in the hand. You even almost paid yourself in. I have nothing to refute your words. It is the dumbest thing I have done in my life. But, I don't regret it in the least. Have you ever regretted anything in your life? Don't talk about regrets. I haven't even seen you depressed before. After thinking about it for a while, countless sad memories flashes through my memories, and finally, I smiled. Nothing. Since I chose seriously in everything I did and tried my best to the last moment, even if it ended up in failure, there is nothing for me to regret. Regret only denies the life that I had, so even if I end up in failure, I just have to total up my experience and try harder the next time. HMPH, of course you won't regret. Now you have another mate whose mind is all on you. Ha, isn't this just like the past? Adam, that rascal, having a crush on Lisa, but Lisa only looking at her team leader Rolo. Can you stop mentioning the pot that didn't open? I am still quite vexed over it. Initially, I thought that there would be a chance this time, but in the end, Elisa and Lisa's taste are exactly the same, totally lack of feeling towards Adam. TL, pot that didn't open, greater than stop specifically talking about whatever that didn't happen, especially when you wanted it to happen. Does Adam know? You think that he wouldn't be aware? That fellow may only have 9 points in intelligence, but his instincts is really outrageously accurate. Just like how he knows you are his big brother Rolo but chooses to act dumb? Actually, I'm not sure about that either. Some matters, if you expose it, it would only end in awkwardness. Sometimes, it is better to just act blur. But for Elisa, he did come talk to me about it. But he only said Elisa is Elisa, Lisa is Lisa. Lisa is dead, so is my heart. I suddenly feel sympathy for Adam. I also feel sympathetic for Margaret. Looking at the situation, Adam has been on a single-sided crush for half of his life as his subconscious continuously beautify his memories, making Lisa a perfect full stop in Adam's heart. He is just putting his memory on replay and beautifying the image of the past Lisa in his mind. He is instinctively rejecting anyone from entering his world. How can the living defeat the dead? Margaret's hard work is destined to go to vain. Why are you looking at me so weirdly? Am I wrong? No, I am just a bit shocked in the authentication of a saying. What saying? Old virgins tend to cherish woman, even if the woman doesn't belong to him. TSK, Margaret has a sharp tongue but soft inside. Back then, despite you being superior in Adam in all aspects, being good looking, strong and steady in how you settle things. You even have a kind of depressing aura when you are alone, which attracts silly girls. That dumb lass Lisa wasn't willing to leave you alone, but Margaret seemed to be unable to give up the Adam who was going around causing trouble like a pitiful dog, helping to clean up after him for half of her life. Finally, after having such a difficult love for more than half of her life, holy knights make a living off their face. It is impossible for them to be unskilled in flirtatious words, otherwise how can they receive plentiful donations? As for the depressed image, when I devoted my body and soul to defeating an opponent out of my league for revenge, it is national that I would end up depressed. TSK, hee. Why are you laughing so hysterically? Did I say anything wrong? No, I am just surprised over the authentication of another saying. Even an overage spinster would become a love expert in endless procrastination and matchmaking. Sparks were fired between the two pair of eyes and finally, it turned into a pair of helpless sigh. After all, this seeming weak spot would just cause both of us mutual damage. Suddenly, the pair of dragon eyes light up and Little Red hugs me, even intentionally placing my head in front of her chest. The scent of alcohol on her body and the soft sensation made me feel a bit weird. Why don't we, the left behind male and female, form a group together? The snow white flesh presses down on me. Fortunately, I no longer need to breathe, or else. This is a confession? The first time in history? Is my springtime finally here? I am finally going to have my first romance in my entire life? Before I can even think of a reply from my confused mind, a familiar cold laughter sound could be heard from my back. HMPH, I sense that Master used a barrier and I was worried that you might be in some trouble, so I rushed here all the way. So, you are eating and flirting here. Hee. A romance between a skeleton and a giant lizard, really makes one at a loss for words. Maybe I can inform the Sulphur Mountain City daily newspaper and playwrights so that the citizens can get juicy news to gossip about, and the concert hall will have a new romance play. If I could still sweat, I would be drenched in cold sweat by now. As for Little Red, she was already rolling on the floor laughing. Obviously, the confession was just a show she made after sensing the arrival of Elisa so as to do me in. Somehow, disappointment and sadness wells up in my heart, and the fact that I wavered for a moment just now makes me really feel like dunking my head into the alcohol barrel. The knife-like glare also makes one feel like running away. Ultraman is fighting with monsters, I must go and assist him. Leaving behind some hysterical words, I immediately escape, missing out on the battle between the women behind my back. Master is mine. The declaration she made after bucking up her courage only received looks of sympathy from the other party. It was a younger sister then. This time, she probably regards you as his daughter. You're still quite pitiful. Good luck, even though the route is long and highly impossible. I won't admit defeat, even if the opponent is you. She seemed to regard the pity of the other party as the easygoingness of a person with a winning ticket in hand. The declaration this time was filled with anger. Don't worry, I've no interest in that pile of bones. Even though Roland suits my appetite, but my goal is to have little dragons. I could reluctantly accept a dragon offspring with mixed blood, but he can't even offer me that, and I'm not a necrophile too. Shaking her hand to signal Elisa to leave, the black-eyed black-haired dragon lady continued her way of drinking that scares even the dwarves. Her entire head is submerged directly into the alcohol barrel and goo-goo. Only the sound of water flowing could be heard. When the confused Elisa walked out of the tavern, she caught sight of me, who was dazing off at the entrance. Is this the ending for someone who shoots their mouth? Indeed, I really have an extremely inauspicious mouth. Hee hee, so this world really does have Ultramen fighting monsters. In front of him is a humongous goblin robot. It is 20 meters tall with 2 heads, one of them being a fire-spitting dragon, which followed my words and was dyed red and even has a horn constructed on it. As for the left and right arm, it is a gigantic screwdriver. The fully armed robots were fighting against the town security, and furthermore, they had an overwhelming advantage due to the humongous size of the robot. The wise Lord Roland, your ideas are really incredible. Look, this is the product of the collaboration of the engineering of both dwarves and goblins. To thank you for inspiration and contribution, we named him Roland number 2. Praises of your wisdom and your unique thoughts will be sung by dwarves and goblins to come. That sound of the shouts from the microphone spreads throughout half of the entire Sulphur Mountain City. In that instant, I knew that I would be in the wanted list of Sulphur Mountain City the next day. Little Red, I take back what I just said. I'm regretting what I said. Who knew that those lunatics would take my word for real and really make it? That large Roboman was fighting while small explosions happen on its body. But the next instant, a goblin and fire dwarf jumps out, and after a few knocks, Roland number 2 was ready to fight once again. Boom. The Big Ben of Sulphur Mountain City just became a part of history. Boom. The watch room that was doomed is really doomed now. Boom. 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 After consecutive explosions, the town security headquarters, which was just rebuilt 2 weeks ago, turned into rubble once more. Looks like I won't just be on the wanted list, I can go straight to the top of the list. Without hesitation, I turned to face Elisa and told her something. Inform everyone on the list that tonight, we are packing our luggage and escaping imminent. No, I mean, we are heading to the Underground Alliance. Chapter 34, Judgment. As the top organization of the judiciary system of Sulphur Mountain City, the Supreme Court is normally shrouded in a quiet and serious atmosphere. Just like the teachings carved on the wall of the hall, properly attired, upholding the law strictly and diligently, talk less and work carefully. What it means is for those working within the legal system to have a serious expression, use simple and concise language, and work swift and effectively. Thus, they are looked upon well by the citizens. But, the situation is slightly different today. The silent corridors are filled now, rowdy and filled with arguments. The prisoners who are carrying metal chains waiting for their hearing filled all of the cells. Even more so, the empty field is crowded with people. At the corner of the field, a giant goblin robot man is reduced to a lump of useless metal. Or rather, considering that it has filled almost half of the area of the field, it should be called a metal jungle or a metal junkyard. Beside it, a group of goblins and dwarves are surrounding it, crying. There are even goblins who started dancing their hip dance passed down by their ancestors, also known as tropical culture belly dance, as though treating this robot man as one of their family members, sending it off. But on the outer perimeter, numerous citizens who were affected by the disaster weren't in the mood to appreciate this passionate dance that was filled with foreign culture. Following Sulphur Mountain's traditions, they used tomatoes and smelly eggs to welcome these troublemaking engineers. Of course, beside the enraged citizens are goblin merchants who have sold quite a bit of ammo. The guards of the Supreme Court were too busy running about to bother about these small things. As the watchroom and town security headquarters are completely destroyed, there was a lack of space to house the suspects. If Sulphur Mountain City Jail was still in its perfect state, they could be transferred over. But due to the after effects of the jail raid back then, a portion of lightly sentenced criminals were transferred to the watchroom. This time, all of them had to be moved away, so only the Supreme Court is left. The 4 halls of the Supreme Court are already on the move, but manpower seems to be still lacking. Sounds of shouting, crying, Being pursued and beat up and pleased to be spared has converted this somber and silent hall of justice into a market full of haggling. At the same time, the me who frowned and tried my best to ignore the racket outside but ultimately ended in failure could only order the guards to seal the doors and windows completely and pull down the blinds to bring the court hearing a silent environment. Yes, court hearing. My plan to escape through the night, oh, no, I mean emergency dispatch plan, was heartlessly refused by Lisa from the very start. Sulphur Mountain City can do without Lich Roland, but if the one who was somehow on the way to becoming the fourth head after the miracle, Sulphur Mountain's king behind the veils, the supreme judge Wumians, were to disappear suddenly, I'm afraid the outcome might even be more serious than the effects of an earthquake. More importantly, the other people are totally unprepared. Even the documents for diplomacy aren't prepared yet. It would only turn into a scene if I were to work individually. However, if I were to remain here in my capacity as Roland, I can start to count exactly how much bones would be left of me the next day. I believe that the town security whose home has been crushed would definitely not have the patience to listen to my explanation. In fact, blowing me up to make soup could be considered a merciful act. I may have done many deeds that I won't be able to complain if the victim were to use my bones to make soup, but I really am innocent this time. I was just randomly shooting my mouth in anticipation of explosion and firework. Who would have expected that they would come up with that toy? Thinking about that 20-meter tall iron giant, I shivered uncontrollably. A simplified version of a metal titan? A monster killing machine that is enough to defeat a legend rank? Seems like they really accidentally managed to create an incredible machine. Of course, the other side effect of Roland number 2 being strong is that a huge price was paid to deal with it. That makes the crime of the mastermind, Roland, even heavier. Thus, I can only end up allowing the town security to watch the scene of Lich Roland riding on a bone dragon across half of the city until he escapes from Sulphur Mountain City. At least, until I manage to prove my innocence, Lich Roland is not coming back. In this instant, I met with my first trouble, which is right in front of me now. This case is way beyond the capability of any other judge, so I ended up stepping up to the task. On the judge stand in the third court, I glance at the crime reports that is stacked like a mini hill, then glance at the defendants with a look of innocence. On the plaintiff stand, the agitated town security are shouting accursed Roland, just wait for the day I feed you to dogs, Lord Wumians. Please give us the authority to directly draw our swords and deliver the verdict. I will cut him into 13 pieces and bring him back, and Momo doesn't care about his deal with the legal system. Please allow Momo to bring a team to raid his house. There is bound to be tons of banned goods in his house, and after we sentence him to life imprisonment, Momo is going to give him first-class treatment. Ha 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 ha. Hearing the frenzied laughter of these homeless dark elves, my head started to hurt. On one side, Prosecutor Katarina is currently reading out the public complaints to amass evidence. 4.20 in the afternoon, smoke suddenly rises up from the watchroom. Then, making use of the chaos, the engineers from the outside came into contact with the rest in the watchroom. Both parties were equipped with engineering equipment from the start to the end. Objection. Since smoke was rising up, what evidence did you have to infer that my client is equipped? My client could have been making use of the smoke to cook their lunch instead. The goblin prosecutor Ra'aran interrupts the words of his colleague and proposes an extremely absurd idea. That's right, we were only barbecuing sweet potato, smoking fish. The defendant's side starts clamoring. Goblins and dwarves have an innate passion for jeering. Only man-eating fishes could be found in the river of Sulphur Mountain City. Where can you find fishes to barbecue? Also, going by the pathetic fishing skills of yours, you don't have to dream of succeeding your entire life. Katarina roars in anger. As expected for a female hunter from the Amazon tribe. Her golden ponytail sways along with the wind, and her aura was as sharp as a dagger, making her reminiscent of a war goddess on a hunt. But, what she was concerned about was slightly off the target. No, as long as the correct method is used, man-eating fish also can be caught. We have Parker's fishing rod. I finally understand why Goblin Ra'aran, despite being highly skilled in prosecuting, decides to defend his own race. This fellow is obviously making a fool of things. Furthermore, being familiar with the act of prosecuting, he knows that prosecutor Katarina likes to stay factual, making it easy for her to be led to a dead end. Then, if he were to make a foolery of the court, then this judgment would be inconclusive. In previous days, it isn't a big deal to let a hearing end up as a farce, but in this instant, for specific reasons, it must definitely not be allowed. I can't let it go down like this. If the goblins are proven innocent, then Lich would have to take the core of the blame. Looking at the town security elves who were angered to the point they were on the verge of biting their tables, I made up my mind to make sinners pay the price. Let the metal plate bitten apart be my witness. My bones are definitely not as hard as the metal plate. Jimby, may I ask you, where were you at 4.20 in the afternoon yesterday? Don't bother lying, you know the consequences of lying in my court. As expected, the moment I asked this question, the temporary defense attorney, who was still talking passionately, then instantly became speechless. I touched my forehead in frustration, portraying an image that there was nothing I could do about it. In reality, a beautiful smile was blooming under my mask. Easy peasy. I knew that you rascal wouldn't stay at home obediently. Now is your turn to take the blame for me. Jimby, to violate the law despite being a part of the judiciary, you have really put the Supreme Court to shame. Now, obediently shut your mouth up and sit at the defendant's stand. Right, apologies to those dark elf ladies first, look at the harm you brought to them. Hearing my words, removes his mask, symbolizing stripping himself of the identity as a member of the judiciary. After apologizing with a lowered head, he sits obediently like a small kid on the defendant's stand together with his brethren. Right, that who? Find Suicide Storm for me too. I dare use my need to guarantee that the fellow is definitely involved too. You don't know him? Suicide Storm from the Hall of Legislator. That short one. It is Magic Storm. A sharp childlike voice unique to dwarves echoes from the spectator stand. My Magic Storm jumps over the barrier and walks to the defendant's stand. I secretly praised how heroic this fellow was, but after walking halfway, I see him turning back to say something. Since we committed the crime, then we should be punished. What are you all waiting for? Afterwards, a messy bunch of them comes down. There were goblins, dwarves and even humans together with other races, totaling up to around 30 to 40 people. Probably, all of the engineers of Sulphur Mountain City are gathered here. Looks like none of those engineers expected that the incident would be blown so big, so they all came to confess obediently. Shaking my head, I looked helplessly at the empty defense attorney stand. I don't think it is possible to find a suitable defense attorney in a short period of time, so you all just try to defend yourselves. Storm, tell me why, even though you all shouldn't be involved in the matter, why did you all appear on the scene? Those evil engineers are enemy of nature. Chirp chirp, that unnatural creation made of a black color cursed material, human-made iron giant. The twisted being that roars and spins is an existence that desecrates nature. That being is a wood-felling machine. Of course it is an enemy of nature. Woof woof. So as the sons of nature, we must cleanse this cursed land, so we want to get rid of him. While trying my best tolerating his weird accents, the middle of his sentences was filled with a few weird callings of the animals. In the start, I was still trying to translate it into human language, but looking at the equally confused spectators, I finally snapped. Speak human language. Otherwise I will lock you together with Beifeng. Herald. The drunken Beifeng's hobbies is already well known all over Sulphur Mountain City. His evil actions of catching druids and treating them as pets makes people feel even more shock. To the victims and their druid brethren, that man is as good as the very incarnation of fear. He seemed to have actually forgotten that he is a man, and think that he really is a dog chasing his tail every day. What exactly did that Draken do to him? Dragon of ultimate evil, nemesis of druids. Beifeng. Herald. That is how all the druids in Sulphur Mountain City calls him. Even the great druid Storm, upon hearing this name, instinctively trembles. We saw the metal giant and it really goes too much against our teachings. My brothers said that we should beat him up and I thought it over. I felt that we should really beat him up, going by the book that my grandfather left behind. So, we went to beat him up, hee hee. Looking at the great druid who was still laughing simple-mindedly, I am speechless. He is really direct this time. But, looking at his dumb face, I can't help but want to punch him. Calm down, calm down. Reputation, reputation, This isn't the first time that these fellows aren't being reliable, so I shouldn't get angry with them. Cough. Fine, then the next matter. The Holy Knight army who suddenly joins in the fight. Tim, I can already roughly guess what did you all do. My lord, please look into it. We are only fulfilling the duties and responsibilities as a Holy Knight. Looking at that huge machine destroying a portion of the city wall, you all shouted Holy Light, that sinner is worth a fight, for Holy Light, charge, and then charged towards it. Then, you casually destroyed another 2 parts of the city wall and over 30 houses? Alright, I can understand that they were dispirited when their original chances at chivalric acts were stolen by the judicial system and it was a hard-found opportunity for them to finally act, so they got into their top gear. But I'm only halfway through. Why aren't you explaining how you end up fighting with the druids? Do you really think I don't know that you had a grudge with Eaglestorm after the nude running incident previously? Later, remember to send the reparation bill slips to Old Bill. I hope that his stomach is feeling better. It was quite scary when he vomited blood previously. The bill this time will be tripled, so that maybe you all can learn from your lesson. Ignoring Tim, who looks like the sky has fallen down, I turn my gaze towards an uneasy young man. Lucas, you just converted from a Holy Knight to a Justice Knight, so why did you bring other students from Nanxian to cause troubles? You even specially picked your ex-comrades to beat up. Don't you know that for a law enforcer who has learned in the law to break the law, your crime is much worse? TL, Nanxian is the law school created by Roland, if you all don't remember. I had great expectations for this young man, so I was curious why, even though they were here to save the civilians, but it ended up in a group fight between Holy Knights and Justice Knights. If I didn't remember wrongly, Lucas and Tim should be quite close. I don't have a problem with Big Brother Tim, and Big Brother has always been very caring towards us. However, other than Big Brother's Third Order, the Holy Church's First Order actually came as well. They intended to play the part of the hero to seduce girls, so I lost control of myself. Other people had looks of confusion on their face, but I immediately got what he was saying. The First Order of the Holy Church in every district is known as the Ceremonial Order. Rather than Holy Knights trained for combat, they are more like handsome guys used for social event and ceremonial purposes. The First Order only has one mission: to find the local nobility and merchants for donations, and sexy ladies tend to be more generous with their money. So, the members of the First Order are carefully picked out. The requirements are that they must have a good face, skilled in diplomatic language, so that if they can accidentally make the noble ladies happy, the donations would nationally be more. So, while the other teams are busy destroying evil, the First Order is busy with balls and dealing with rich ladies. While the other teams are training under the hot sun, the First Order is in the secret chamber doing group facial. Furthermore, for their image, the maintenance of the steeds and armors of the First Order is sponsored by the church. This difference in treatment naturally makes the image of the First Order terrible in the eyes of other Holy Knights, but I must say, doing facials are expensive and the money came from our pocket, you know. Furthermore, when we attend balls, it feels terrible to have to maintain your image despite drinking to the point of wanting to puke. Do you bastards think all those rich ladies are all beautiful like flowers? In reality, a large portion of them are like pigs. Even though these oily trotters are disgusting, we must tolerate it. If we were to accidentally chop down on them, it will become a diplomatic problem, you know. Most importantly, don't just look at how they are surrounded by women. In reality, the First Order, to attract the fancy of rich ladies for more donations, they aren't allowed to fall in love and still have to recite their lines every day, practice the art of being cool, and try their best to act like a love saint. Even if he meets a hard to come by good woman, he can only watch her and not eat her. This kind of emotion feels even worse than failing to court her, you know. Alright, I didn't verbally say at the complaints above, but looks like I accidentally spilled some of my dark history. Cough. When I was still a page, I have been to the First Order, despite hanging out the main fighting teams afterwards, but it took me more than a year to kick away those odd habits. TL, Page is an apprentice knight, usually used as a servant for knights. Don't blame this little brother over here, we all understand. We all understand the leader of the First Order Mon, who was rubbing his hands together, is a blonde handsome guy. Not to mention, he instinctively flings his hair and shoots a seducing gaze to the sides. While disgusting men, there were women who shouted so handsome. I send a look of sympathy towards him. 59th art of head flinging, 63rd art of seductive gaze. Looks like the church hasn't really changed much these days. Seeing by how experienced he is, it should be a big haughty level seductive gaze. In order to maintain his skill, he must at least practice it 300 times a day. He probably can't even speak normally anymore and would habitually send seductive gaze to guys as well. He is really at the bottom of the pit for being pitiful. Thus, I spoke seriously to Lucas. Apologize to Captain Muln now. In this instant. Hurry up. It's alright, it's alright. Little brother, we are all comrades under the Order faction. While saying these words, Muln's eyes were still scanning, as though looking for a target in the spectator stand. Then, he habitually sends seductive gazes all around. As a senior and someone who went through the same thing, I knew that this is the instinct to find food that they were forced to hone. However, in the young Lucas's eyes, it was a look that he wasn't taking him seriously. I definitely want apologies. Even if I don't be a Justice Knight, I won't be a human anymore. I will go to the undead district to become a Black Knight. It was difficult for him to find a new faith, but when he realized that he still had to lower his head to his sworn enemies of the past, this young man was unable to handle the cruel truth and tears started flowing. But, he must be mistaking something. There are no Dark Knights in the undead district, only Death Knights. Cough. Alright, back to the main topic at hand. At this point, things are quite clear now. From the very start, the engineers created a gigantic robot man. Then, the town security came to apprehend them, but they ended suppressed by the huge physique of the robot giant. Afterwards, the druids joined into the battle, followed by the holy knights who came to rid evil. At the same time, Tim made use of the chaos to settle his scores with Eagle Storm. So the druids started fighting with the Holy Knights. Further down, the Nyxian Justice Knight in turn thought that the First Order, who was here as support, was making use of this opportunity to flirt with girls, so they also made use of the chaos to attack them. This is really chaotic. In the end, no one even bothered about that robot anymore. Everyone fought their own battle. They are obviously using this as an opportunity to settle their private grudges. If I were to really punish them, then a few thousand people who be locked in at once. Looking at the situation of our jail and watch room, which are still rubble, and in consideration of the fact that there are no casualties, this incident is really an unintentional accident. Thus, I resolutely knock my gavel down. Court temporarily put on hold. All of the accused will be released temporarily. Before getting approval from the Supreme Court, suspects are not to leave Sulphur Mountain City. The reparation fees for the destruction will be equally split among those who joined in and are involved in the fight. At the same time, the judiciary system will hasten the reparations for the jail and watch room. When the mastermind, Roland, is found, the court hearing will begin once again. Fine. Everything ends up as Roland's fault. Looking at the indignant town security who was on the verge of doing something, it seems like they intend to apprehend Roland personally. Looks like Roland isn't coming back. Elisa, do you think Rosie or Robert sounds better? Alright, after the incident yesterday, she is in the midst of ignoring me. However, this judgment has caused me to make up my mind. If I'm not here, these fellows are going to cause chaos throughout. Then, the ambassador party has been decided. I will bring these living treasures over and at the same time, fix Roland number 2 and thoroughly flip the Underground Alliance upside down. Chapter 35, Scattering Seeds. The Underground City Kromtoxo, probably the underground city closest to Sulphur Mountain City. Though it is not a route that merchants must pass through to head to other underground cities, but quite a handful of merchants would choose to head out from there to stock up on subsistence, or purchase some mining products, jewels, slaves and other special products. 70% of its citizens are dwarves and underground beastmen, and the original city lord is the king of the pig tribe, underground beastman HNG. The land here is infertile, and after the army raided a few merchants, it caused the infamy of the greediness of these pigs to spread afar. Nowadays, they have no other choice than to rely on their mining industry and slavery trade. When the news of the death of City Lord HNG spread out, It wasn't surprising that the entire Chrome City plunged into chaos. There is reason why the entire underground world is viewed as a land of chaos by the Order faction. At least, in most of the underground cities, what they believe in is the primitive survival of the fittest, and the city lord together with the nobles are the ones with the strongest fist. The outstanding reproductive ability of the pig tribe resulted in their massive population, and in previous days, it was only through balancing of power that allowed a certain level of stability within the tribe. However, HNG died too suddenly this time, and he even brought along the number one elite army of the tribe, the Blackwater Army, down with him on this operation, causing his son and successor, to not have enough influence and power to stabilize the situation, so the powerful figures in line for the throne started wavering. Powerful figures mean influential figures / powerful people, maybe individually or as a group. Can't really find a suitable word for this, and this phrase appears quite a lot in the novel. Or rather, using the word wavering to describe these pigheads are a bit too merciful. After news spread out that afternoon, all restraints are cut and the internal strife started. The second biggest tribe, Greywood Lizards and Grey Dwarves, teamed up together, intending to enthrone themselves. Also, the peasants couldn't live on in the city anymore, and the miners who intended to flee for their lives. Chaos is contagious and fights started breaking out everywhere. Chrome City's 700,000 population immediately cuts by a tenth. Alright, it was already a picture of disaster when Lilith and her team arrived at Chrome City. If she delayed her schedule and arrived 2 days later, Chrome City's population would have probably cut by a half. Of course, when the situation has settled, the victors get to reap the rewards. Very quickly, there will be new city lord and nobles in Chrome City, then it would go into another relatively stable period. As for the slaves and peasants who died in the chaos, no one cares. The underground world that is formed by exiled is this kind of world. The strongest fist, the winner eats it all while the weak dies. But looking at the smoke rising throughout the city, the guards and armed beastmen are actually casually slaughtering the citizens they should have been protecting. Lilith and the other enforcers of Sulphur Mountain City went into a rage. Thus, Lilith activated the God Equipment scattered page of Codex, letting the God Equipment of Law sending the entire city into the Great Judgment. Of course, to do it like what I did the previous time, directly judging the entire city through the laws, is impossible. But this scattered page of a God Equipment is still a God Equipment, and has the power to back it up. Through the laws. Greater than actually here he means the law of the world. Just like how holy light is the law of the world, the power of law, after being recognized, can be considered the law of the world as well. Scattered page of the Codex, God Equipment, Faith in Law, 367 999. The belief from 1,000 people in a week allows it to increase by 1 point every week, and the cap is 50 points every month. When the points reach the maximum, it will automatically replicate another scattered page. In every period of time, when the God Equipment origin of Codex collects sufficient faith in law, it will create a piece of scattered page. It is a part of the God Equipment of Law origin of Codex, and is a manifestation of its will and power. There is a line of words on the scattered page: the indefatigable one never rests, the gaze of his intangible eyes is always on you. Effect 1, the Land of Law, passive. In the heart of the city where it is placed, the entire city will become a land of law, and in the area where its effect is active, enforcers can wield the power of law. Effect 2, Great Judgment, active, requires 100 faith in law to activate, and consumes 1 point every minute after activation. After the user activates it, everyone in the city will be cast with a legend rank level judgment spell and be judged on their actions in the last 3 hours. If guilty, their freedom will be restricted and debuffs such as intangible cuffs and weapon seal will be inflicted on them. In the Great Judgment, the effects of the enforcer's incantation of law will be multiplied several folds and their power ranking will be increased by 1. The requirements for usage: the laws in the city are in chaos, criminals are doing as they please, and the city is on the verge of destruction. Effect 3, Unknown. For those who forgot, Wumians, greater than indefatigable one. God Equipment are God Equipment after all. When they are utilized, they have the potential to change the flow of a battle. The number of God Equipment that changed history are numerous. Even if, The scattered page of the Codex is just a replica. After the Great Judgment, all of the criminals are judged and inflicted with a bunch of debuffs while the enforcer's power ranking went up by 1. A gold rank like Lilith becomes a legend rank, and expecting the chaos in Chrome City, her logistics department known as the Hall of Legislation obviously lacked firepower. So, to stabilize the situation, I sent the strongest Hall of Law over. The Hall of Law is filled with old fellows that are well versed with the law. Normally, they are the judges of the Supreme Court, and most of them have a job in the legal system. Then, the weakest of them all is a gold rank. Can't exactly remember, but one of the requirement to change your job to one in the law seems to be a minimum of gold rank. This time, almost the entire of the Hall of Law was sent out, that is over 200 gold ranks and 7 legend rank. That is to say, during the 5 hours of Great Judgment, there are 200 legend rank and 6 world saints. But it is a pity that head of Hall of Law Kale is still recuperating at home. If the world saint were to go up another rank, that would be epic, just a step away from semi-god. If he tries out the power in advance, it could do him some good for his advancement in the future. But even so, 200 legends and 6 world saints, this is already outrageous enough. Even the previous city lord HNG was only a legend pinnacle. What happened afterwards is simple. In the 5 hours before the faith in law is fully expended, all of the murderers and thugs were cleared, and when the red light of sin is bright to a certain extent, it means that the crime warrants a death penalty, and the experts of the Hall of Law, towards these ugly crimes, don't know the meaning of the word mercy. Thus, the Great Judgment becomes a great execution. After the incident, the smell of blood in Chrome City didn't dissipate for 10 days. As for those who were rescued in the catastrophe, a large portion of the citizens of Chrome City started regarding these outsiders as their saviors. Capturing the weakness of their heart after the incident, the Judgmenters tried their best to spread the ideas of law and order, and the Withered God equipment scattered page of Codex also starts recovering under the faith of the citizens who were rescued, even if the next time it could be used is 3 months later. This movement to take over the city is bound to shock the entire underground world. Its effects would be far greater than the setback faced by the 2 underground autarchs. After all, the opponents that the 2 underground autarch was facing were the almighty semi-gods, and the forbidden spell that judged all of the criminals and destroyed the armies of the invaders could be explained as a prepared forbidden spell trap. But this sudden appearance of a powerful army, over 200 legends and 6 world saints, this can no longer be explained by saying that they were prepared. This only shows the power and the peculiarity of this new power of law. I can already start imagining what would happen afterwards. Very quickly, the information of power of law and the law jobs would spread across the entire underground world. Perhaps, my Justice Knights created by the power of law wouldn't be able to explore around like the Holy Knights and are unable to fight and tank to make a huge difference in an offensive war. But, as protectors of the order and law, when they are protecting citizens for villains, they can easily exert a battle power several times stronger. My Judgmenters don't need to go around like priests to spread their teachings, sing praises about the greatness of holy light and the purity of the order gods. He only needs to spread around the Codex of Law, understand and analyze the cases, and create a simple court one after another, punishing the evildoers and redressing the grievances of the weak. Then, the normal people who benefited from it and achieved a peaceful life would naturally start believing in the law and provide the power of faith. The power of faith is the main power source of the Order God. CHP 33. My law incantationers will study the integration of the legislation with the power of the rules, creating new incantation of law, making the power of law and the fighting ability of law jobs to become even greater. Power of law is acknowledged by the origin of order, and so its spells must go by the concept of laws. Power of law. It is a purely defensive and targeted power. Very quickly, the underground city lords will end up with this kind of conclusion, and their heart will start to waver. After all, who wouldn't wish the land they govern to become more peaceful and prosperous? Mass-producing security officers using the power of law to provide support to the internal security of their land, one would know just by thinking about it that it is a beneficial act. Simply producing these kind of law class experts wouldn't bring the world to them. If they join in the army of invaders, the sin of starting a war would cause them to lose their law job identity and their power of law. However, they can use the manpower who are originally used to maintain peace in the city to fight the war, leaving behind these law class experts to protect their homeland. Law jobs are allowed to join in the fight to protect a city. Wouldn't it also improve their total fighting power in the end? The underground world's pursuit of strength is never ending. Very soon, those who came up with this conclusion would send people over to learn, steal and even snatch. As for me, I intend to give out the Codex of Law for free, and not mentioning the secrets to practicing the arts. I will even give out the God equipment scattered pages of Codex to relatively friendly cities. TL. BTW Codex of Law refers to a plain book on law. Whoever who wants it can go ahead to take it. I will first say it beforehand, it is a defensive power of order that targets sinners. That is to say, if the opponent is not a sinner or if their sins aren't as heavy, then it is far from matching up to the almost omnipotent holy light. Of course, these underground lords will not give up just because of my warnings, and instead, they will go mad over the limited stocks on the God equipment. I will look forward to the day that they, who are full of sins, are brought up to the execution platform by their citizens. Will they remember the words that I said to them the day I passed the power of law over to them? If everything goes on successfully, the power of law will spread to every single corner of the underground world very quickly. Maybe, in a short period of time, a decade of two, its effects may not be plain to see. But when a new generation who wields the power of law arises, the entire underground world would gradually go through a massive change. Furthermore, the underground world isn't the end of the road for the power of law. The Holy Church, who have long received the Codex from me, should be trying it out on the surface and achieving good results. As people who respects the order, they would be even more obsessed with the advantages the power of law has for maintaining security and the judgment of crimes. Maybe, in 3 or 4 decades later, there would be existence of law jobs in every city. This is my wish, and also the most important part of my plan, is let the seeds fly along with the wind. I'm not hasty about this, and rather, I am willing to take my time. Perhaps, someone would see through my scheme. Oh, no, since it is all exposed on the outside, calling it a project would be much more suitable. Even if they see through my project, this gigantic benefit that I offer will make them happily swallow this sweet poison. Afterwards, as the roots of the power of law stretch deep and that grows healthily, the intangible executioner's blade will land on the heads of the underground city lords. But the current me didn't have the leisure to think so far ahead. Only yesterday did the ambassador team and the construction workers arrive Chrome City. Looking at this pile of wreckage, the faces of the citizens were still filled with smiles and hope for the future. Indubitably, it means that our takeover has already won the support of the citizens. Thus, even though I already find her very trustworthy, in this instant, my satisfaction bar with Lilith shot through the roof. In just a few short days, she managed to reorganize the entire government structure and judiciary system and wield the authority of the city lord temporarily in her hands. When everything starts to settle down, she will pass the power on to the public council that about to be created. As for the authority to write the legislation, of course it belongs to the hands of Sulphur Mountain City Supreme Court's Chrome branch, converting this city into a land of law. Indeed, if we don't consider the unspeakable private problems that she has, she is the hard to come by normal person in the top brass of the judiciary system. Even more so, she is the head of logistics of the entire judiciary system, so her efficiency in getting things done is top notch. You bear with it for the moment and stay as the city lord before the council elections are completed. Then, are you interested in becoming the branch head? The moment I said these words, the faces of the others who is with her hardens and shakes their head vehemently behind her back. They weren't worrying about the young Lilith catching up with them, but, Lord, please reconsider. If I were to become the branch head here, I'm afraid that problems would occur in the Sulphur Mountain City headquarters. After all, the other heads are. There wasn't any need to say any further. As a disciple in name of the Saint Margaret, even if Cale isn't injured, he would have been obsessed in books and scrolls, combining theory together with experiments to create new incantation of law. As for Calvin, his presence is too weak and his leadership ability can almost be entirely ignored. As for the last of the 4 heavenly kings of the judiciary, the guardian of Steel Hall head. Looking around me, I don't see any guardian of steel, Only a pervert who is currently discussing his experiences in nude running with Eagle is Torm. Yes, just like how you can't leave Lord Silver Rose, the Four Halls One Court can't do without me for now. There was a tinge of pride within these words that Lilith said. She has seen her previous accomplishments in her job as the pride of her life. Indeed, if Elisa is my private head of logistics and my outer conscience, constantly reminding me not to go too far, then Lilith is the head of logistics and only conscience of the entire Sulphur Mountain City's Four Halls One Court, allowing the humongous system to operate healthily. If she wasn't here, big problems would probably arise. Then let Kelvin transfer here. You find him a helper from your Hall of Legislation to help him deal with his work. Are the ambassadors from Kaja and Ainsterna here yet? TL, the other two underground autarchs. If you don't remember, Kaja's ambassador is already here. Ainsterna's ambassador should be here in a few more days. I nodded my head satisfied. This is also one of the reasons why I must stop at Chrome City. Since I have already offended two of the underground autarch, then naturally, I should try to get along with the other two, and they have decisively stretched out their hand of friendship to me. Joining the Underground Alliance would, needless to say, require an invitation letter. I would be lowering our value if I knock on their door. Right now, these ambassadors are definitely bringing me the invitation letter that I want. Just like how the surface elves and beastmen's relationship forged by blood and hatred, the dark elves and underground beastmen are deep-rooted enemies, and the agent of the devils and the agent of the demons, and even more so, destined to be mutual enemies. The beastmen Sovereign Shoe's relationship with Kaja and Ainsterna were destined to be fractured, and Molly is an unreliable two-faced ally. Even if the enemy of an enemy cannot be considered an ally, but they can form an alliance built on benefits. But if you believe the Dark Elves, who believes that betraying and murder is a value, and really treat the cunning and evil devils as an alliance, that is equal to tying a knot on your own knot and handing over the knot to the other party. Not a single one of the underground autarchs is easy to deal with. Has the news of that eternal night scepter is about to appear spread out? As I predicted, the other party gave his confirmation, and I turned my attention to the field. There, 16 gigantic gnome robots were nervously testing out their weapons. The engineers from Sulphur Mountain City were currently working their hardest to rush these robots out, and Chrome City's outstanding Grey Dwarf's blacksmith with a history of mining would become a steady pillar of support for these engineers. At least, with the city's rich mine reserves, the metal used for these big fellows are much better than the original, much firmer and long-lasting. No one listens to the words of the weak in the underground world. If the weak has a treasure that no one steals, that can only mean the treasure is a fake. Then, if we want to play at a show, we should go all the way through. Before Ainsterna's ambassador arrives, let's finish building our treasure-protecting army. Right, are these toys really safe? This is the third time you have asked today. Ra'aran has already done 17 edits on the blueprint to refine it to perfection. It is definitely safe. From theory. Theory again. I was afraid that they would edit it to be too perfect. They are always unsatisfied with the blueprint and try to incorporate some of their unique skills and secret techniques into the product they're making and call it perfection. The last time, a gnome did some refinement to a shaver and destroyed the entire barber shop. 2 days ago, when I asked those trouble-causing bastards again, I realized that I overlooked a blind spot. At that time, even though the giant robot is surrounded, but in the end, everyone was fighting their own battle and no one bothered with the big fellow. Then how was it destroyed? I get it. I will immediately get Ra'aran and my hooer to do an 18th edit. Yes, that giant robot wasn't destroyed by external attacks, but rather, from what I expected from the start, suicide explosion. That being said, I am starting to feel that these bastards who were punished deserved it. While getting engrossed in fighting, you all actually forgot your primary objective. Right, can you change the name? The name makes me panic. A string of words could be seen from the front: Roland number 3, Roland number 4. All the way to Roland number 18. These Rolands who could explode anytime. How was it possible for me, Lich Roland, to not panic? That, I have already said it many times, but the gnomes and dwarves insisted on using their creator's name and said that this was a tradition. In fact, their pilots were also very adamant, making it impossible to change it. The pilots? You mean those pilots we chose from the Dark Elves? They shouldn't have a reason to insist on it though. I thought they hated Lich Roland to the guts? Yes, they really hate him very much. But they said, sitting in Roland number makes them feel like they are sitting inside the body of their enemies. Looking at the painted name of Roland, it reminds them of their treasures and dowry that was destroyed twice, giving them infinite motivation. This way, they will not forget their vows to catch that bastard, no matter where he escapes to and what he disguises as. Lord, why are you squatting there? Are you feeling unwell? No, I just feel like I should reduce my size a little bit. They are so tall there, so they shouldn't be able to see my clearly right. Chapter 36, Crossing Sword. From the very start, it is just a small young sprout. As the dew drips down, the silver sprout begins to grow gradually. Its branches extend and silver leaves started to unfurl towards the heavens. Afterwards, the buds of flowers begin to awaken. She stretches her back and a thin veil begins to form, turning into beautiful petals one after another. Its slow-growing phase was completed in just a short few seconds. Unfortunately, the one that bloomed isn't a true rose but an ice rose on the finger of a young lady. Ice creation, rose garden. Lightly pinching on the branch of the rose, the leaves and flower petals float away with the wind. Hidden under the calm tone is explicit killing intent. Behind Elisa's back is an entire garden of silver roses, and rewinding just a few seconds before, it was an empty plot of land devoid of life. Every single rose is exquisite to perfection. Every branch and leaf vein seems to be trembling and breathing, as though it really has a life. Just looking at its silver chilling qualities, it shows apparently that it is a product of magic. A wind blows. No, the air is still calm. It is just those roses that played the part of being blown by a wind. Countless rose petals float along the wind, becoming sharp knives in the wind. Killing intent, dancing with roses. This may seem like a serene and beautiful sight, but it is a fatal trap that takes away lives. From the start, there wasn't any wind here. Those rose petals that seem to be floating in the wind are in reality knives of ice controlled by the mage. Every single petal of that ice rose may seem soft and weak, but it is incomparably sharp. It can even cut through plate mails. Every single ice blade is targeted towards one target. It is that fiery red giant egg. Countless cold flower petals attack the giant egg, but the moment it comes close to its body, the tiny petals vaporize instantly. But Elisa didn't give up. With a snap of her fingers, another 3 roses bloom in the air. It frantically absorbs ice mana to strengthen itself, and the result of the flower petals gathering the magic is that the ice branches begins to mature. Looks like she is gathering her magic to throw a big one in. Sigh, to force out the little cradle so fast. Your family's Lisa really isn't simple at all. Compared to the immature Annie, it really is a strength that completely suppresses hers. Did you teach her that? It really is beautiful. I didn't expect you still have a technique like this. But, if I didn't sense wrongly, her killing intent is real? She really wants to get rid of Annie? It is impossible for Little Red to mistake it with her eyes. She is phrasing it this way just not to make things awkward for me. I shook my head. I knew her meaning. How was it possible for my ice magic to be so exquisite? No. You know that my understanding towards magic is very simple and violent. Gather magic power and blast him. If you can destroy him, gather more magic to blast him. If you still can't get him, blast his outer shell a few more times, then gather firepower towards his core. To tell the truth, your declaration then made me and Margaret speechless. Your understanding towards magic stopped at the stage of a cannon stand, and your understanding towards elemental magic stopped at colors. Your control towards element is also so rough, and you totally ignore the properties of elements. I really can't comprehend it. How did you become a semi-god undead mage? Of course it is relying on the golden fingers of the system. As long as my strength is there, rank is not a problem. Fine, I won't say this kind of truthful words. The talents of humans tend towards the good. Outstanding talent towards the power of order, holy light, law are all lower concepts under the power of order, and swordsmanship talent has already made me easily become an ace among the knights. When I converted to dark magic, I had difficulty grasping the ideas of dark magic. But, necromancy is obviously a lower concept below the power of chaos, but I was able to comprehend and use it easily. which shows that my aptitude towards the power of chaos isn't that bad either, and this was already very hard to come by. As for controlling elemental magic exquisitely, is simply blasting magic power over a mistake. The simpler it is, the more basic and powerful it is. Back then, when I invented Ician, which left its mark as an extremely powerful forbidden spell in history, its original principle was still using magic power to blast the enemy, except that its mana consumption is much more outrageous. Elemental magic originate from the ancient elemental gods, so going by logic, it should belong to the Chaos faction. But due to its outstanding destructive powers and the low requirements to learn it, it became the one of the mainstream magic between the two factions. HMPH, the understanding of other people's view towards elemental magic are the wrong one. Fine, don't look at me like this. I know that I suck at that aspect. You are master of wind and fire, well-recognized fire expert, so don't bully this ice mage rookie. No, don't put yourself down. Your skills may suck, but as your mana is pure and your storage capacity is humongous, you are, on the contrary, extremely scary when it comes to releasing forbidden spell level magic. But your disciple went the exact different road from you. Her control over magic even allowed her to carve the veins of the leaf. The rose blades are indeed very creative, but due to its exquisiteness, it is weak and fragile, so she seemed to have went overboard too. She is a fire elemental demon after all. Even if she had studied ice magic for nearly a century, but the amount of ice mana that she can accumulate is limited. You also know, the only ice magic that I do know are those big magics. When though they aren't difficult to grasp, but they have a high requirement on the mana capacity. She is unable to utilize the higher level magic in forbidden spells, so she spent a lot of effort on ice creation and related magic, which I don't specialize in. But the results seem to be quite good. Little Red and I chatted while at the same, keeping our guards up to be ready to strike out at any time to prevent any serious injuries from occurring. Initially, Annie had already decided to go out to gain some experience in real battle. When she learned that Elisa is also a gold pinnacle mage, Annie challenged her, and the sight before me is also within expectations. They may both be gold pinnacle, but with the accumulation of 100 years of experience, Elisa was able to have an overwhelming advantage over her, and very swiftly, she forced Annie into the little cradle stage. Pa! With a snap of her fingers, the 3 roses which have gathered sufficient magic power bursts open, and the fragments, as sharp as knife, rotates as it flies towards the giant tag. Before the ice fragments hit it, following a roar, the giant fire egg bursts open and the flames spread in all directions. At the same time, a 3-meter big phoenix flies to the sky. The little cradle absorbs and stores its power until its limit before exploding into a phoenix strike, Adam's classical shameless battle strategy. In the fire phoenix form, Annie's high body temperature can easily melt any ice. The incompatibility in elements is too obvious. Looks like your student Elisa is going to lose. I smiled in reply. She won't lose. Why don't we bet something, like that red gem defense accessory in your treasure vault? Little Red also smiles. I'm not betting. After so many years, is there any single bet you lose in? I tried my best to recall and realized that it was true. I haven't really lost in a bet. Without a 100% chance at victory, I refuse to bet. Even if I am forced into it, I would definitely cheat, and if I were to really lose, of all odds, I would probably refuse to pay. Little Reds had decided not to bet, but the scene that unfurled before her eyes made her regret her decision a bit. The phoenix flies to the highest point, and after a sharp roar, it starts swiping down. At the same time, Elisa didn't stop her attacks, but in the face of the burning phoenix, the countless ice splints, ice spears and ice all melted into water even before it could touch her. Facing immense danger in front of her, Elisa was extremely calm. Her both hands twirl around in the air, and the water vapor that was gathered earlier instantly solidifies, and countless ice threads tied the phoenix in place. You cannot tie Annie down. Following Annie's declaration and burst of strength, the ice threads melt continuously, and Elisa could only continuously form new threads in exchange to seal the phoenix's motion. It has already come to a critical period of their duel. It is the harmony of fire and ice, a dance between the two young ladies. When Elisa finally finished weaving her web, sealing Annie within, A familiar call of the phoenix rings out and fire begins to burst in all direction again before forming back into a fire phoenix which begins its charge once more. A second cradle. Little Annie sure learns fast. This time, after using the formless web of water vapor is gone, Elisa no longer has any methods of stopping her. When magic is ineffective in stopping her, facing Annie who was charging in that high speed, Elisa had nowhere to retreat to. The warrior has closed in on the mage. Elisa has lost. Ah, I knew I should have bet with you. Were you just faking it just now? No, if you really bet with me this time, you would have lost. For sure. Little Red was on the verge of asking something, but the next scene that she saw left her in shock. Towards the charging phoenix, Elisa actually took in a deep breath of air and opens her arms, getting ready to catch her. That charge of that fire phoenix transformation is actually the god sword blessing of the phoenix. She is seeking death. Little Red was intending to terminate this duel, but I stopped her. Don't underestimate Elisa. TSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSS Her both hands are already cooked, but Elisa, seeming to feel nothing, threw away her staff, pulls in her stomach while sticking out her chest, draws her right hand behind and punches. Dang! This fist actually gave a sound like the metal pole hitting the bell. TL, metal pole hitting the bell, greater than this while everything was still shaking. The elemental barrier of the phoenix scatters and a red-haired young lady who was turning her head around appears from within. What happened afterwards is a one-sided slaughter. Arm lock, throwing techniques, grabbing the enemy's hand while hugging their legs and sending a hook, metal plate crush, neck pulling and the hell's great rotation. Aren't these those weird fighting techniques of yours? TL. All attacking techniques and really no idea what it means, so I'm just going to directly translate word for word. Please call it self-defense skills of a mage. These are precious fighting techniques that came from another world. Calling it wrestling techniques aren't wrong too. At this point, Annie's arm has been locked in a position and can only pat the ground to surrender. The winner is already determined, and it is Elisa's complete victory. So that's how it is, half demon, huh? What fearsome brute strength. Yes, this brute strength is sufficient to compete with demi-dragons. You haven't seen her sweep yet. With just a light sweep, she can send the entire sofa flying. Then, she would take my secret money stash and treats it as the wages that I owe her. Fine, seems like I accidentally exposed something, but this isn't the main point now. She hasn't demonstrated her battle prowess in mid to near range combat when she gathers all of her steel wires mixed together with ice wires. Have you forgotten that she is a fire element half demon? She has astonishing immunity towards fire damage. Also, coupled with her ice magic that is effective against fire magic and her outstanding close combat skills, she is Annie's nemesis. You seem to be very delighted? Of course I am delighted. My disciple just beat Adam's disciple. She might have certain advantages due to clashes in their attributes, but doesn't this mean that my ability to teach is above that of Adam's? Ha, she is a shared disciple between you and Margaret. Finally, after watching the entire battle by the side, Lilith couldn't take it any longer and interrupts. Madame Lorsai's envoy has already waited for 2 days. May I ask when does my lord has the free time to meet her? No hurry. Dark elves all have cheap bones. If you try talk to them nicely, they won't listen to you. Leave her be for 2 days, until she understands her situation. Hearing that, despite the fact that I was obviously slandering her own brethren, Diana and Yawn, who was standing beside Lilith, nods their head vehemently. I heard that it was a matriarch of a middle-class family, so it is more unlikely for them to interact obediently. In my opinion, we should at least leave her for half a month. It isn't the first time I am trying to communicate with the Dark Elf nobles, so I am quite experienced. If these female nobles are Lorsai's priestos, that would make them even more difficult to deal with. In the eyes of Lorsai's priestesses and Dark Elf matriarchs, there are only 2 types of males in all races: a slave with a master and a wild-born slave that is temporarily without a master. I don't even have to see her to know that the envoy would immediately use a tone of as though doing charity towards me, choking people to death the instant she opens her mouth. Males, may the light shine upon your head, this is one of the most venomous curse of the Dark Elves. Our female goddess has sent her will and you must. Basically, Socializing with dark elves will become a one-sided affair of them giving orders. It is one thing if you agree, but if it is war straight if you refuse to agree. This kind of eccentric socializing method makes it highly possible for discussions to fall through. However, dark elves basically don't need to socialize. They spend most of their time fighting. In a way, being able to socialize means that the other party has recognized your strength. At the very least, fighting would not be beneficial. I can guarantee that the dark elves still think that we owe them a favor. Why? Back when the two underground autarchs attacked, by not joining in and stabbing us in the back, in the bizarre values of the dark elves, just by not causing further harm, it can already be considered as an outstanding act of kindness. This situation is sort of like a test. If the proud envoy still managed to get VIP treatment, this means that you have something to plead them for. Then, they would propose absurd conditions in exchange. So, to interact with dark elves, time and patience cannot be lacking. Whoever who takes the initiative to negotiate would be at a disadvantage right from the start. But, if we are competing in terms of patience, I am a very patient person. It is best to wait until the envoy of the last underground autarch is here so that everyone can start the haggling together. In this instant, from the other side of the field, a group of dark elf justice knights ran here. They are wearing thin shirts and are barefooted. Yet, they carry a heavy chainmail and were shouting a fearsome chant as they walked past us. Do you feel like the scene is a bit familiar? That is how I punished Diana from the start. Seeing my questioning eyes, Diana replies slight embarrassed. The punishment was tough, but after I reached my limits, I felt like my powers reached a new peak. This kind of carrying weights barefooted drills is very effective in training one's will and pushing one's body to the limit. Thus, I promoted this sort of training method in the team. Then, two comrades who were stuck at Silver Pinnacle broke into the gold rank right after their first try. Gratitude could be seen from her beautiful eyes, but I didn't feel the happiness. Instead, I asked worriedly, I am not asking about this, your chant. Oh, that, 1 2 1 2, train hard, 3 4 3 4, catch Roland, 5 6 5 6, boil Roland soup, 7 8 7 8, save our dowry. That was created by the last Momo, reminding us that we must remember our goals. The others are still okay, but dowry? Are you all in such a rush to marry someone? Then why did you all reject the advances of the knights in the city? Oh, you are misunderstanding something. This dowry is a slang word we are used to saying. You see, we, dark elves, don't have the same concept of marriage as other races. Finding a companion, isn't it still marrying a man? In our slang, dowry refers to marrying a man's money, which is equal to your so-called treasuring a wife for money. TL, a bit hard to translate, treasured wife's money? Greater than means something to be cherished while? Refer to men who marry women for money. Speechless, my head swayed. I respect the customs of different tribes, so I still can accept it. But, isn't Roland? Before I can finish my words, the two dark elves' captains' faces were full of frost. 2 times, our house, our salary and properties that took us so much difficulty to accumulate. Lord, just this thing, I can't give it up. I must account to my sisters. Alright, there is nothing more to say. Looks like this crime is mine to carry. Chapter 37, Ziluo and the 4 Heavenly Kings. Ziluo Empire consists made up of Ziluo Swamp, Carta Desert, and Bja Highlands. Its complicated terrain makes it an easy territory to defend, but hard to launch an offense from. Actually, to be more precise and blunt, it is a horrendous place where the living are unable to reside in. The Great Death Swamp, the sparsely populated Great Desert and the freezing Highlands, these are the 3 great dangerous restricted areas for the living, forming a hell for the living and playground for the dead. Not a lot of people knows that in this magical world, the harshness of nature isn't unbeatable. In the depths of the Great Swamp, there is a land where it is spring all year round. The grasses and wood are dense and the scenery just like a painting. That is the capital of Ziluo, the Kalar administrative district. Even this seemingly miraculous land was traded for with a high price and a lot of time. The soul towers at the areas beside the capital were forever radiating the light of souls and magic. In other times, it would have meant a death flood of white bones, but now, it is just countless undead workers who are working. As long as it is an intelligent being, even if it is a high-tier undead who hates the living, they still retain their sense of aesthetics from when they are living. No one likes it when their home is a pile of wreckage and dirty mud. The immortal undead never lack time and manpower. When the people of the world still thinks it is a sight of hell here, but then somehow, this place has already started to gradually change. Ziluo Empire's capital Ziluo, there are nearly 1 million silver rank and above intelligent undead, 20 million living that serve as servants and slaves, and the number of low-tier undead are completely immeasurable. The scenery in the city is breathtaking. It is well equipped with all the basic infrastructure and transportation network, that consists of underground pipes and floating crafts, were extremely technologically advanced. If we only look at the city's scale and design, even the All-An capital, which is known for its extravagance, can't even compare to half of Ziluo's. The sculptures by the road might just be a certain country's royalty heirloom that was passed down for thousands of years. This is the accumulation from the Undead Empire, which has destroyed numerous kingdoms. Accumulation, greater than. Can't think of any suitable English word for this word. Is normally used to refer to a person / country / anything has accumulated quite a bit and has huge resources behind it. For example, can be used to refer to a multitude of financial resources an old merchant accumulated throughout his lifetime. Can be used for military power, etc. To in one of the luxurious mansions within Ziluo City, the 7th senator of the empire, Spider Marquis Lionheart, is currently dealing with matters of governance. As one of the strongest Death Knights in the Empire, he is the commander of the Death Knights in name and their teacher. However, in the eyes of the people of the Empire, he is always dressed in a loose clothing reminiscent of scholars and appearing with the image of a gentle and intelligent general. The capital of Ziluo Empire is Ziluo. But those truly understand him will know that once this fellow gets on the battlefield, he would be a ferocious beast that cannot be controlled. There was once he went against the orders of his superior and made an inhuman record by traveling 2,000 kilometers within 17 days to destroy an entire kingdom. The so-called keeper of history and the polite scholarly general can only be said to be his hobby and disguise off the battlefield. But today, this eternal royal guard of the Emperor Yong-ai, goes mad the moment he gets on the war chariot. The irrational undead war chariot was inside his own residence and deeply in thought with 2 intelligence reports in hand. His dignified face hardens, as though he has met with an extremely difficult question. Lionheart, why are you looking so bitter? Is those long ears in the west starting to cause trouble? Or did the barbarians in the south go down their mountains? If it is this kind of interesting stuff, then let Big Sister share your worries. A cold and lazy female voice could be heard from outside the residence. Despite it being a question, a strange sense of happiness and teasing could be felt within her tone, as though she was getting excited from the thought of fighting. Lord Grey.Sen, there is no fighting, and please do not try to stir up war. I have told you many times that the wariness the living has towards us has already reached the limit. Towards the Empire, a meaningless war isn't a good thing. DSK, then why did you call me here today? You know that I am only interested in war. Or, could it be that the bunch of liches of the council is bored and looking for things to do? Or is it the diplomacy problem the last time? You better go look for other senators. I, the 4th senator, the Duchess of the Empire, Bone Dragon Queen Grey.Sen, is uninterested in those matters. Looking at just the outer appearance, she is a cold and tall female elf. Her long silver hair reaches down all the way to her waist. Her pale skin, which has no trace of redness from blood, had a bizarre kind of aesthetics to it, and a long skirt that drags all the way to the floor had the color of red and black intertwining on it. The most striking part of her appearance is her eyes, those inverted black-white eyes that seem to be felt like a black hole that is absorbing light. There seems to be something there, yet nothing there. Meaning black sclera. White iris. Ziluo Empire's structure is probably the weirdest one in the entire world. Despite being an empire, it doesn't have an emperor, and all of the authority is split among the 12 senators. There is a Council of Dark Night which takes care of everything in the empire, but towards the 12 senators, they only have the authority to suggest ideas. Simply said, there is a bunch of undead lords, senators, that were grasping all of the military might, which the Council of Dark Night isn't able to interfere with. But, the senators also can't do anything towards the authority of the United Liches. So, without the undead emperor with the highest authority, both parties can only walk their own way without interfering with each other. resulting in the formation of this weird structure. Of course, there are senators that are close to the council. In fact, the head of the council is the second senator Feynman. There are also quite a few other senators which walks very closely with the council, and the debate to abolish the council is brought up every year. But, if they don't want to start an internal war, then this suggestion is destined to never pass through. Grey.Sin and Lionheart are senators which aren't close with the Council of Dark Knight. In fact, while most of the senators have set their eyes on the seat of the Emperor, they were the very few of the royalty faction who believes that there will be a day where Lord Yongai would return. This is a very idealistic notion that is welcomed by old soldiers of the time of the Emperor, but as it is unrealistic, so it is unable to strike it big in the undead tribe, which is getting more and more pragmatic. As time passes, more and more of their companions started to turn to other factions. Not long ago, the royalty faction, which had 4 senators, began to fracture again as one of the 4 heavenly kings under the Emperor, Ghoul King Dekars, turned to the council faction, striking a heavy blow to this small faction. Wanting to be the big boss faction, most of the senators, the council faction, the second senator leading the pack, the idealistic royalty faction, and the living life casually faction, these are probably the biggest factions in Zayuo Empire. It might sound very complicated, but if you were to compare it with the hundreds of factions in a human empire, in a country with more than 10 million intelligent beings, the situation with the undead could be said to be very simple already. Not to mention, most of the undead has already shouted out their goals directly. Wait for the Emperor to return, the council takes over the governance, I will be the leader. Ah Dang doesn't have any opinion on who becomes the leader. Ah Dang only wants to eat. If I become the leader, I will start another undead calamity. These kinds of words would be considered inconceivable in the human society which likes to beat around the bush. Right now, 2 of the leaders of the royalty faction are meeting directly in the day. Probably, rumors are flying around right now. But in this instant, under Grey.Sin's questioning, Lionheart didn't even raise his head and only threw out a sentence at her. There is news on Eternal Night Scepter. Grey.Sin was stunned for a moment before shock covers her face. I thought you said the Eternal Night Scepter definitely doesn't exist. I thought those famous works of yours is just used to scare others? Yes, going by my judgment then, the Emperor is probably treating it as a joke. In fact, a joke in bad humor. Those things I wrote was just to make those ambitious factions that are intending to enthrone themselves spend their efforts to look for a wooden scepter that would possibly never be found. Lionheart raises his head and his sword-shaped eyebrows twisted together, and his expression could be said to be flavorful. There is happiness, angry, reminiscence, and uneasiness. Yesterday, I received 2 news regarding the underground world. One of them was regarding the Eternal Night Scepter. But, I recommend that you see the other one first. Grey.Sin snatches it over. But I thought that it was some important intelligence. But isn't this a tourism brochure? Lionheart, do you intend to go on a holiday and inviting me to? I'm sorry, you are a good man, but other than the Emperor, I am not interested in any other undead. Already used to his unreliable comrades, but compared to the other 2 of the heavenly kings, the Bone Dragon Queen, which tends to overthink things, is much easier to deal with. He solemnly accepts the good man card and says plainly, please look at it more carefully. The Death Royale Undead Theme Park and Ghost Festival Tourism Week. Enjoy a tour full of surprise of darkness and death. There will be 30 free entrance tickets to give away before we open for business. What is this? Is this some kind of lame plan that an idiot came up with? Boring. I would be interested in a war theme park though. But Undead Theme Park and Ghost Festival, don't we have that every day here? Please look at it more carefully. Sulphur Mountain City. Oh, Adam.Han finally went mad? That is something to celebrate about. Please look at it more carefully. Even the patient Lionheart was starting to lose it with the Bone Dragon Queen's eccentric and scattered thoughts. Helplessness and pleading were infused into his tone. Looking at the steeled face of her little brother, Grey.Sin finally decided to get serious. When she flipped to the second page, she stunned. That was a very vivid advertisement picture. On it, many different undead were wearing weird clothes while walking the streets. Some were banging the gong and hitting the drums. Some were singing and dancing, but if it was just it, how could Grey.Sin be startled? Right now, she can only open her mouth wide, pointing towards a corner of the picture. Her image as an undead lords all went down the gutter. Dressed in many different colors with peacock feathers poking into him, the skeleton dog was trying his best to use his lower limb to handstand. Below him, there is a green-colored ball. It is a game of a cute pet pushing the ball. However, its balancing techniques didn't seem to be outstanding, just a careless mistake and he would fall, and the artist managed to capture the silliness in the instant he fell. Ah, it is Boss Bastian, the fierce and strong leader of the four heavenly kings, the demonic space hellhound Bastian. Lionheart has already covered his ears in advance, but even so, he was rattled to the bones by the Bone Dragon Queen's siren-like scream. This ancient Bone Dragon Queen's voice was long reputed to be the throat of death. Seriously amazing dissonance. I give you all the authority to beat her up the moment she starts to prepare to sing, by some emperor in this instant. Lionheart could also understand the shriek of death by the other party. Back then when he first looked at this painting, he wasn't much better either. Demonic Space Hellhound Bastian, the captain of the Royal Guards of Lord Yong-ai, the Red Hunting Hounds, the vice commander of the entire Yong-ai army, the leader of the four heavenly kings. There are a bunch of these kind of titles, but what is known is that he is the strongest undead lord. He has destroyed countless armies and kingdoms by himself, and only wreckage is left on the land he passes through. He is the most trusted and relied on general by Emperor Yong-ai. His subordinates and he should have been killed in that war, but his sudden appearance, and furthermore with such a cute look, naturally scared Grey Sin badly. It can't be wrong, that weird bend of the tail, the scars on the brain, and more importantly, the eerie sight of having two left legs in the front and two right legs at the back. It is impossible for any other skeleton dogs to look like that. Yes, other than Lord Bastian, I can't think of anyone else who would take out their four limbs when they sleep and reattach them randomly after waking up. Front leg, back leg, left leg, right leg, he reassembles it as he pleases, and then when he starts walking, his four limbs moves freely, causing him to instantly walk in circles. The sudden appearance of the leader of the four heavenly kings who should have been dead and what it means made Grey Sin feel like happiness came too quick, and happiness, yet at the same time, she felt a little unconfident. Could it be that the artist drew it randomly? No, you look at the back. Turning to the next page, there is a skeleton general that has 18 arms. Right now, what is on his arms isn't swords with fresh blood on it, but wooden poles with spinning plates on it. There was even an explanation below. The jack of all trades Defay will show you tricks that defy human limits, spinning 18 plates at once. Squinting her eyes, Grey Sin stared for a long time but didn't really get it. I don't think that there is anything there. Only a fellow that knows how to spin plates. When skeleton generals go up in rank, they can choose to grow another pair of arms to wield more weapons, but the soul has its limits. Being overly focused with too many weapons would only hurt oneself. A normal skeleton general is able to control 4 weapons at once. Top class weapon experts can wield 8 at once, and undead lord class can wield 12. There is a person that can wield 16 though, the subordinate of Lord Bastian, the head instructor of Red Hunting Hounds, Great Sword Saint Fade. Looks like he has improved. Defay? Fade? There is totally no effort give for this fake name. There is also this person. This is a Dullahan using his own head to play polo. No, below an exciting race that you have never seen before. Camisia, the dumbass. That stupid bald old man. That cross-eyed idiot. I would recognize him even if he turns to ashes. Yes, the person with strength of a titan, the terrifying charge of courage, the vice captain of the Red Hunting Hounds, Lord Camisia. Also, there is this person. It is a lich with her hands rubbed together. In this instant, her face was full of smiles and she was carrying a bag of green-colored liquid. No, below you have definitely never drunk before such delicious drinks. Created especially for you by Master Alchemist Fifi, the favorite of those who likes to exercise. That insignia of alchemy and that queer hat. The mistress of plagues Kaka. Even undead did not dare to drink the medicine she makes. Those living, pooh, after drinking it, they would definitely be strengthened, but I hope that they still remember what they look like, so that they can try to find back their original appearance. There is still this and this. The legendary bone dragon who serves as a ride, a female viper who dances belly dance, and a great witch who does divination. I roughly get it. Yes, My intelligence team disguised as tourists have went into play for a while and even received the commemoration badge indicating that they are the ninth tourist. Looks like their business isn't doing good. They have confirmed that the people in the picture are all real, that is to say. Sin stands up, her eerie eyes full of happiness. That is to say that our emperor is still alive. Yes, only our emperor can make these top warriors dress in such a look, and only our emperor can make our leader obediently play with his ball. This is only a primary conjecture. Back then, there were many things amiss with that incident. Why did the royal guard's red hunting hound suddenly leave behind our emperor and head to a land 1,000 miles away? Why did the armies of the other three heavenly kings suddenly be deployed to the sidelines far away from the core of the battle, allowing them to escape the brunt of the internal conflict? Maybe, the underground world will bring us some answers. What that should originally be breaking news about the appearance of Lord Yang, in the eyes of these two, due to the small tourist brochure, became unimportant. I must go to the underground world, now. HMPH, damn Dekars, he was brought up bit by bit from a weak ghoul by the Emperor. Back then, you were the one most who spoke up the loudest for revenge, so we thought that you were the most loyal of us all. In the end, you managed to hold on for 100 years but still betrayed us in the end. When our Emperor and leader is back, look at how they will deal with you. After hesitating for a moment, Lionheart speaks softly. Actually, Lord Dekars's betrayal is suspicious as well. 10 years ago, when we received news about Adam Haunt, but the proposal to exact revenge was blocked and even we didn't support him to do as his pleas, didn't he go to Sulphur Mountain City by himself to look for Adam for revenge? We thought that he wouldn't return. Yes, no one would have thought that. Not only did he return, but he even happily organized a few fighting tournaments. Just when we were happy with how he thought it through, in a turn of the eye, he abandoned us for the council faction. Maybe, this is the most suspicious point of all. Emperor had praised Dekars and his most loyal dog many times. This may seem like an insult, but you also know, our Emperor has an exceptional affection towards dogs, so Dekars has always treated this title as the highest honor and the Emperor's exclusive nickname for him. Yeah, back then he wanted to use Knight of Dog Packs, this weird name, to replace the name of the army Knight of Winter Wolves. It was gladdening that you managed to stop it. But, it was a pity that the Royal Guards still went with the name Red Hunting Hounds. Pink Queen Army obviously sounds much better. Cough. A light cough eventually became an internal slander. Your taste in names is as eccentric as the Emperor's, and in addition to your throat of death, that is the reason why Emperor chose Lord Bastian and not you as the head of Royal Guards to accompany him around. Of course, he wouldn't say these words out loud. I believe in our Emperor's judgment. Since he believes Dekars to such an extent, then Dekars should be worthy of our trust as well. Or maybe, Lord Dekars met someone in the underground world, or someone gave him certain instructions. Saying these words, the gaze of the two people immediately shot towards the tourism brochure on the table. I'm heading out now. I am unable to leave Zayuo, so I can only depend on you. The underground world would definitely be chaotic now. If even we ignorant militarists, a slander for the council, can find news about the Eternal Night Scepter, the fellows who have been looking for it for a century would definitely go all out for it. Lord Grey.Sen, please prioritize looking for that person. If I am not wrong, that scepter is most probably a trap laid by that person. Grey.Sen isn't a person who doesn't listen to advice. That little brother, despite not being one of the four heavenly kings, but just based on his loyalty towards the Emperor and his wisdom, he managed to climb up step by step to the core of the royalty faction. His suggestions tend to be useful to an old fellow like herself, so she would naturally try to respect it. Right, please bring along Lord Audane. If I didn't guess wrongly, since the person is causing a storm right now, he should be looking forward to reuniting with Lord Audane. Are you sure? Fine, I get it, I will bring it along. The Carnivore Audane, the final head of the royalty faction, the 12th Senator. In reality, it is a giant abomination. It didn't have high intelligence, but if you were to look at individual battle prowess, there probably isn't a single undead in Zayuo that would dare challenge this dull-witted kid unworthy of being an undead lord and senator. TL, abomination. greater than probably looks something like this. Ding doesn't have a high intelligence, but after the departure of the Emperor, he listens obediently to the words of his big brothers and big sisters. As long as Sin asks for it, he would even tear apart the council's building and bash those Lich counselors who slandered the Emperor. Looking at the leaving Sin, Lionheart stands up and looking at the sight of prosperity outside the window, he falls into deep thoughts. This is the teaching of the Emperor. Small Lionheart, just being able to fight isn't cute. A fighter wouldn't last long, and someone who only knows how to charge straight would be treated like a fool. It is better you study more and get a proper job. Right, do you like history? I have always thought that reading history would make one more intelligent. If you have the time, study more history books. Remembering that pair of big warm hands, after being beautified in his memories, the gentle, knowledgeable and caring voice, also being beautified, the Emperor's servant Small Lionheart has now become the keeper of history. Lionheart, and after trying to study history to understand the present, he used his both eyes to see through the boundaries of time. You are always worrying while reading those history books, as though those disastrous catastrophes that destroyed eons and worlds might come again, and those weird prediction notebooks that even I am unable to understand. God of order? God of death? Ayor? Chain reaction? Butterfly effect? Emperor, just what were you looking at? Just what made you despair and give up everything to start from scratch? Who? Come out. After a roar, a familiar laughing face appears outside the door. It is Sin who went and returned. Little brother Lionheart, it's better to lower down your volume when you talk to yourself. Otherwise, if it spreads out, other people will treat you like a lunatic. You heard it. No, I only came back to inform you of something. I heard nothing at all. Facing this bone dragon queen who was trying her best to act ignorant, Lionheart laughs, albeit a little irritated. Dang, and her are his most trusted people in this dangerous country. Inform me what? Don't call me Sin in the future, change it to Graia. Don't call it wrongly. Hearing this, Lionheart felt a little baffled. Why? You have been called Sin for the past 1,000 years, so why change your name suddenly? It can't be that you have listened to those fortune tellers in alleys. They're con artists who are unskilled, you know. No, it is just that some trouble came up and I must change my name? Inconceivable. Who can make a first-tier Duchess Senator of the Empire change her name? Before that, didn't the elders try to reorganize the nobility system and their inheritors of the whole country? Suddenly, they realized that my name was unable to appear inside the magic website, so it cannot be printed. Thus, they recommended that I change my name. Unable to appear? Why? TL, her name is Gela. See? Greater than. I would have translated it to Grace if it wasn't for the dot. It is that lacy that caused the problem. It is said that in a faraway mountainous area, lay.c is another way to call women who has a unique sexual orientation. Didn't we undergo a system update in the magical website, for the sake of the creation of society, started to block out these banned words, so now, that magical website instantly changes all banned words in 20. So, if you insist on calling me Gela.c, in the future, my nameplate would show Empire First Tier Duchess, the 4th Senator G20. Isn't that too embarrassing? So I had no choice but to change my name to Graia, so don't call it wrongly. Can there be an even more ridiculous reason for your change? For a Senator of the Empire, you changed your name for such a ridiculous reason? Don't you hear your pride and dignity crying? Alright. I heard that the main reason is that some will of the universe couldn't be bothered to put a dot in the middle of my name, so my name had to change. Chapter 38, The Elves and the City of Platinum. Underground City Velcastance. In the words of the goblins, it means City of Platinum. It has a very unique geographical location, being in the middle of quite a few active volcanoes. It is a city among volcanoes, and the river of lava that flows tirelessly cuts the city off from the surrounding land. To enter the pavilion in the sky, one must go through the spiral staircase at the city below, and the moment they meet invaders, they only have to block these spiral stairs or simply drown it with water or poisonous gas, then basically, they would be cut off the rest of the world. At the back of the city, between the wall of rocks, there is actually an opening that leads to the surface, allowing it to dominate the business between the surface and the underground world, and even more so, giving it an escape route in times of danger. In the underground world, safety is something viewed more important than any other incentives. Very quickly, after it drew in numerous merchants to permanently reside in the city, it became a city with business from near and far. Other than the goblins who insists on using its original name, other races normally name it as Vance. Vance City's outstanding geographical location makes it an ideal fortress, turning it into a true golden city of the underground world, earning the goblins who found and built it a great deal. Of course, in the underground city, not possessing power to protect your treasures and fortune is also an original sin. But, the wall behind its back cannot protect it from daggers coming from the back and the breath of flying dragons. After a series of scheming and calculations, the pioneer batch of goblins who created this city has already disappeared, and now, this place is without a city lord, making it neutral city without a lord. The reason? As the factions within the city is too complicated, there are influences from every underground lord within the city, so whoever who becomes the city lord could very possibly be assassinated the next day. Thus, this formed the eerie situation of not having any lords. Leave this as a public passage to the surface and a location to trade with other cities, a neutral zone for diplomacy. The underground lords and underground autarchs who have tasted the sweetness formed a consensus on this issue. This is also the main reason why Vance City is used for negotiating the Underground Alliance. After all, if you negotiate on the grounds of the Dark Elves, the Grey Dwarves and Beastmen would be displeased. If you negotiate on the Beastmen territory, the Elves, Dwarves and humans wouldn't be able to accept it. If you try to strike the deal in the Dragon City, everyone would have to grow a pair of wings first, and if you do it the Goblin territory, which is highly business focused, due to the expensive fee in entering the city and for lodgings, everyone won't be pleased. The Lordless Vance naturally became only choice. 1 week ago, there was an astonishing entrance to the city. The news of 17 gigantic metal titans and the eternal night scepter that it was protecting has already spread across the entire underground city, and Sulphur Mountain City's young city lord Danny has started to gain some fame. Right now, cloaked in my long robe and a mantle, I started wandering around this city, which was quite similar to Sulphur Mountain City. When I say that Vance City is similar to Sulphur Mountain City, I meant that it is a city with diverse races, without nobility, a well-known prosperous trading city, but in my eyes, it is the exact same points on where they differ. Other than the undead, who very few people can accept having them as neighbors, most of the Sulphur Mountain City's different races live together. A small shop, a patrolling team, a barber, it is possible that their members are of different races, and also, the mindset of that all races are equal has already been ingrained in Sulphur Mountain City, so slavery and such isn't an acceptable act. But in this city, the slavery trade is quite lucrative, and in fact, there are even markets and coliseums specially for slaves. There might be many different races living here, but the districts they live in are demarcated very clearly. The boundaries of each race are clear, and their fighting has never stopped in the shadows. For example, the 2 Wolf Rider humans who just got dragged Beastmen district would probably be never coming out. This should be the Elf district, and only they would be so free. The Elves are publicly known to be the #1 race in their aesthetics sense. Their pursuit for beauty and art is boundless. The exiled Dark Elves are no different, and if you think this only applies to infrastructures, sculptures and paintings, you are underestimating them. In front of me at the top of the rock cliff, a gigantic stone has been carved into a vivid image of an elegant lady. That seeming to reject yet welcoming expression, the lips that were slightly curved up, and the sexy figure which her 2 hands were unable to cover tend to make one think about some unspeakable things. Uncle Bones, look at this sword. It is so pretty. Since it is a private visit, then naturally, I wouldn't bring too much people along. Behind me, also wearing a mantle, is the envoy team's leader in name Annie, and my external conscience Elisa. In this instant, Annie was waving a thin mithril sword. The sword's body is long and slim like a needle. On it, there is golden color rose carved on it, and on the handle, 2 fallen angels beside each other was sculpted on it. Their wings were spread apart, as though roaring towards the heavens. Yet, the glowing green blade indicates that it isn't just a piece of decoration but a lethal weapon that has been enchanted with poison. At least, the dark-skinned dark elf merchant is currently trying to convince the young city lord on this point. Art piece. The Sword of Fallen Angels? Attack power, 0 to 5, +1 poison damage, tier, superior? Special ability, none. Oh, no, she still has a special ability. At least, it can show that you are rich and silly enough to buy this luxurious but unpractical toy. Perhaps, if you dance with it in the dance, you might still be able to blind your enemy's eyes with her. Weakness, fragile. When clashing arms with superior tier weapons, there is a 70% chance it will instantly break. Ike above. This dumbass elf, for the sake of beauty, actually carved the sword empty? This is a classic elf artwork, elegant design, exquisite carving, expensive material, perfect workmanship, and then, useless. Battle. Do you really intend to bring an art piece to the battlefield? Or do you want your grave to be carved to indicate that you are an artist? Better go and choose from the bulky dwarves. In this instant, facing the Annie who was using her strength to wave the sword, on the verge of buying it, I am a bit speechless. What does it take to get the system to acknowledge that you are an art piece? What does it take to get the system to acknowledge that you are a piece of trash? The goods of the elves are as good at making people speechless as always. The pursuit of art and beauty is perfectly normal, but to do it to such an extent, using the precious enchanted metal mithril to make the body of the sword, but yet overdoing the carvings, resulting in the blade being weaker than normal weapons, isn't this forgetting the initial goal of weapons? Using the same materials to make weapon, elf blacksmiths are always able to make it look so elegant and beautiful, but by overdoing the adornments, they sacrifice the practicality of the weapon for beauty, resulting in them always making some stuff that would leave people speechless. For example, the elf thin sword here and the more famous elf chainmail. That toy is famous for its compatibility with mages. Normally, metals would have a huge effect of spell casting. Even war mages who often go on the front line would tend to wear a mage robe rather than a metal chainmail, which has a more outstanding defensive ability. But, the elf mages invented a new elf chainmail known as the Song of Harmony, known to be as comfortable for a mage wearing a normal robe and wouldn't affect spell casting. In reality, they managed to do it. The overjoyed elf kingdom spent huge amount to make this series of chainmail commonplace, but then, they found a small problem with it. This chainmail's defensive ability is inferior to robes. Chainmail are normally made by solid metal band together to provide reliable defensive ability. But, the Song of Harmony hollow metal pins break the instant it touches something, giving it totally no defense against metal weapons whatsoever. Sometime, rolling around to avoid arrows would result in the chainmail scattering all around the ground. Afterwards, they still have to spend several hours to put it back together and wear it thick-skinned, pretending as though everything is still okay. After all, the poor soldiers cannot afford to compensate that chainmail which has 4 zeros on its price tag. Then, when the court did an investigation on the design and attempted to improve it, they realized that it was precisely because it was hollow enough. That's why magic power is able to flow through the spellcaster, but for it to be hollow to such an extent, there is no need to think about increasing its defensive power. If it is thick enough, it will become like other metal defensive gears, so this line of thought is contradictory, thus it is unable to be improved. That kingdom's treasury was totally spent on purchasing the expensive metal, and the country was destroyed not long after in an undead calamity. The Song of Harmony then became a symbol of the elf equipment's luxurious and unpractical design. To tell truth, I don't really know to deal with those precious metal left in my storeroom. Overworking on it and the enchantment already made it impossible to work on them any further. In the end, I threw it to those elf blacksmiths for them to struggle over the creation of an art piece. This is why elves' creations are unwelcomed in the underground city but very popular among the nobles of human kingdoms. The best-selling weapons of underground cities are forever the great dwarves. Of course, the elves wouldn't admit it. They would think that it is the slander of those with short lifespan. We have sufficient time to master it to perfection. You are just jealous of our artistic cells. You dumb and short-sighted objects, you all are more suited to use the dwarves' ugly burnt metal sticks. The gigantic female elf sculpture was also like this. Someone seems to think that it is a sculpture of goddess Lorsi or some material required for a magic ritual. But even if the system doesn't tell me directly that it is statue of a sculptor's dream stripper, I could roughly guess that it is the result of the elf's artistic talent acting up. Hanging on the wall of the cliff, a sculpture 100-meter tall that requires a floating spell to reach, incredibly beautiful, attracting countless gazes, but in the end, it is just a sculpture. If it is done by a human craftsman, it would probably require at least a 400-man army to work together for 5 to 6 years. But if it is an elf, it can very well be some great artist's sudden inspiration causing him to spend a few hundred years here to do something meaningless. For an elf whose lifespan is, on average, 1,000, they would have the time to waste, but humans don't have such leisure. The conclusion of the competition of patience with Lorsai's Archbishop and goddaughter Kaja has been revealed. After I consecutively caused the third matriarch's envoy to take their leave, she also decisively left me a letter, inviting me to Vance's elf district for negotiations. At this moment, Alisa behind me, by using the reason that we are about to conduct secret negotiations so it is inappropriate for us to interact too much with local business, managed to convince Annie to give up that sword. Our peace. Lord Annie, please prioritize official matters. For simple tasks like purchasing or so, you can leave it to servants like us. Her tone, as usual, was filled with venom, but ever since Annie realized that she was unable to beat her in an argument, of course part of the reason is that she is unable to defeat this big sister, she also began to learn to ignore the malice in the other party's words. But looking at this situation, I started to frown. Annie is our appointed city lord, and Alisa might very well be our future head of Internal Affairs Bureau or the head of the Supreme Court of some kind of other high official. If they are unable to get along, or even become enemies, it might cause big trouble in Sulphur Mountain City in the future. Even though Alisa can maintain basic respect towards everyone, how come she has such great resentment towards Annie? Looks like I must look for an opportunity to talk to her about this. Suddenly, the elf guards in front of us split into two by the sides, and following that, a tall dark elf priestess walks out from the shadow. Behind her, there are many proud female dark elves dressed extravagantly. There are a total of 72 dark elf cities in the underground world, but it looks like more than 20 matriarchs of the first family came here. If we were to ignore those who are unable to make it due to being too far, there is at least half of the Spider Queen Lorsai and her priestesses here. Are they trying to showcase their might now? Of course they are showcasing their might. The matriarchs here, in their own underground cities, their authority and might wouldn't be inferior to Sulphur Mountain City's city lord. Now that they are standing quietly in a line by the side like a subordinate, it makes Kaja's authority seem more apparent, and indubitably, it is a silent way of pressuring us. Mortal, you must learn to be humble. You can sit together with my subordinates. But I smiled. The emperor would never compare his authority with his farmers. A true authoritative winner doesn't need too much adornment. To stage such a show, it can only show that she is unconfident. She is worried about Sulphur Mountain City's strength and even fear it, so she wants to find something to suppress this new rising power. Looks like the show I staged for the entry of this city is quite effective. That day, when we entered the city, 17 of the Roland series giant robot walked in arrogantly into the city. After being stopped, we sent one of the robots and bashed the two black dragons that were guarding the gate into pulp. In the chaotic battle, we even accidentally destroyed the city's metal alloy gates, showcasing the powerful strength and the sturdy material of the gigantic robot. After the incident, I made Danny announce that these are machinery that Sulphur Mountain City is going to auction off, causing an even bigger ripple. This is much useful than advertisement and bragging. Everyone would start thinking they are even willing to split with this kind of war machine that can defeat a dragon independently. Does this mean that Sulphur Mountain City still have some kind of ace up their sleeves? Of course, this is just me making a fake impression. At this moment, I can't help but remember the report of Ra Ern a while ago. Lord, the preparations for Roland number 3 to number 18 is finished. If the one controlling it is a gold rank warrior, it should be able to display a battle strength of half a legend. At that moment, I was quite surprised. After all, the image of Roland number 2's powerful charges were still in my mind. That kind of powerful battle strength can easily suppress legend ranks. Even though it might not reach the stage of a world saint, but it shouldn't be too far off. Now that these robots are only half a legend, it feels like the result is a little unsatisfactory. But very quickly, I understood what was going on from the explanations. Roland number 2 is a prototype. A prototype, no matter what price we pay, how many expensive and precious metal we use, we must prove that our design concept is correct. Back then, over 100 engineers brought their private stashes. A master even infused the Titan's heart that was passed down from his ancestors, thus allowing Roland number 2 to have such might. If we wish for other Rolands to have such battle power, I'm afraid that even if our engineers are able to do it, you are unable to pay the bills. Very quickly, I got proof that no matter it is what type of engineer-made robot it is all made of an energy source, an exoskeleton armor, an engine and transmission device. The Titan's heart is a heart-shaped jewel that is formed after a Titan's death. It contains the highest quality power of electricity and is also the highest quality energy source. After all, this world is fair. A legend rank and above battle power cannot be replicated easily. Even if I were to make an extremely strong exoskeleton, without a top-notch energy source, it is impossible to create an even more powerful battle tool. In reality, in this bizarre world where fossil fuels just came into play but rockets are still flying around, a superior energy source can only be obtained normally by hunting powerful magic beasts, and luck still plays an important part. A powerful energy source that can provide sufficient kinetic energy is the core for engineering to show its true potential. Talking about this, I can't help but remember a similar experience that I went through before. Didn't I use the system's lottery? That time, I managed to obtain an equipment that surpasses God equipment, a mystical gadget called Small Light that came from the pouch of a blue cat in a certain world. At that moment, I was overjoyed. I thought that the lottery was finally operating properly for once, giving me a top-class equipment that I can truly use. But afterwards, I realized that I was tricked again, that I was happy too early, that I underestimated the bottom limit of the system's shamelessness. The Small Light is real, but there isn't battery inside. Looking in the manual of the Small Light that I was unable to use, I begged the system to trade me a battery. However, that bastard system didn't intend to let me grasp hold of the god equipment that can overturn cause and effect, so how is it possible for it to allow me to trade? After drawing the lottery with the battery as my goal, I only managed to obtain the take-copter flying machine, which also lacked batteries, a toy pistol of a certain cowboy, and also a random bathtub that fills itself with hot water. I finally understood the system's persistence in playing pranks, then I decided to rely myself. Afterwards, after confirming that in engineering, there is no such thing as a small-scale energy source, battery, I squeezed out my brain juice and collected countless chemistry books. Only then did I realize that going by continent's technology level, to make something like battery, the first thing that has to be solved is the liquid required for electrolysis, conductors for electricity, and a few bottlenecks. Also, after solving these problems, we still have to tackle the problem of creating a whole string of technical problems. By the time we manage to get everything required on the tree of technology, a conservative estimate would be around 200 to 300 years later. And this is assuming that it would be a smooth journey full of miracles. I had no choice but to give up on the idea of causing an industrial revolution in the continents. Cough. Looks like I went too far. Back to the topic. Even though Roland 2 will be very powerful, assuming it hasn't blown up yet, but number 3 and machines after that can only reach the power of half a legend. Thus, I immediately changed my plan. All of the Roland system will use number 2 at its blueprint. Not a single difference is allowed. Even the number written behind the Rolands were wiped clean, so that other people can't tell the difference between them. The things that came after that is easy. After staging a show of Roland number 2 heroically fighting the evil dragons, the Rolands behind became the most effective threat. To tell truth, I feel very awkward every time this name is called, but I was unable to get a consensus on changing the name. In the eyes of those who are aware, it is an existence of a robot that crushes legend rank and 16 half-legends. It may be scary to normal city lords, after all normal underground city lords are only a legend rank, but to the underground autarchs who have 3-figure number of underground cities under their control, what can it count as? But now, after staging that show, in the eyes of those who are unaware, that is 13 Saint rank war machines. Even underground autarchs have to be careful of it. TL. Not sure if it is a typo, but it does say 13 twice, so I'll stick with it. After declaring that there will be an auction, the whole is shocked by Sulphur Mountain City's backing, to be able to casually sell 13 saint ranks. At the same time, I am able to earn quite a bit. At least, I will be able to get back my material fee and manpower cost. If both parties aren't on the same starting line, then what is the point of negotiating an alliance? No matter how we negotiate, it ends up with the weaker one getting eaten up and merged in. The effect that I spent all my effort planning for has finally been achieved. The daughter of the true god Lorsai, the high leader of all of the dark elves in name, Kaja, making her force known is sufficient to prove everything. You must be Wumians. May the Spider Queen's footsteps resound in your ears. Perhaps, we can talk. You and me, privately, secretly. Kaja's voice has some kind of special magic to them, as though a lover that is whispering sweet nothings, as though a sacred priestess that is preaching. Somehow, it makes one unconsciously wants to continue listening on. However, after listening to her words and warmth welcome, all of the matriarchs behind her bursts into laughter. In the Dark Elf's bizarre and straightforward views on love, this seemingly warmth welcome is actually equal to "Hey, let's go get a room," that kind of rude and crude message. May the Spider Queen's footsteps resound in your ears is also naturally, not any good words. It may seem like she is asking for the goddess she served to bless you, but in reality, it is a vicious curse. Lorsai is the goddess of spider, and spiders did not have footsteps. When she is intentionally stomping her foot for you to hear, it is only to warn you of her rival, or maybe, it means that she is going to get rid of you, or that she wants to see your ugly state while struggling for life. How many years has it been? Elves still like to play this game of adding in sarcasm and curses into their greetings. If you are unable to detect it, they would mock your lack in knowledge, the short lifespan of your race, and your lack of experience. However, this trick is useless on me. In the long life that I had went through, I have seen a couple of elf kingdoms which have an history of over 10,000 years destroyed, and their countless precious manuals became my private collection. What does this kind of sarcastic joke count as? Respected Madam Kaja, I thank you for your greetings. May the Spider Queen's 8 eyes be always on you. I pray that the envoy of the candlelight descends beside you. This is also not pleasant words. The Spider Queen Lorsai is vicious, cunning, skeptical, fickle-minded, jealous. Actually, as her reputation is really bad, you can almost add in any negative adjectives behind here, and it is well known throughout the world. So how can her gaze being on you be anything good? Envoy of the candlelight? It just means Yoklal. Those evil creatures are Lorsai's envoys. After they descend, it is definitely a whole string of scheming and trouble, and you might not even be rewarded for finishing it. If you don't do it satisfactorily, you can go and meet Lorsai immediately. Go with your soul, leaving your physical body behind. For the matriarchs, these kind of superior is better off not meeting. Okay. I just realized that the Spider Queen's name should be Lilith from D&D, but a little lazy to change, so I will stick with Lorsai for now. Anyway, Yoklal, my blessings could be considered a disaster to the person, but to a priestess of Lorsai, being highly regarded by her superior is a good thing. So, Kaja isn't able to retort. But the Kaja who has just lost the verbal battle simply smiles lightly, as expected of the great saint who single-handedly created the power of law. Your knowledge and wisdom is worth our respect. Let us just abandon the minutiae and talk about the topics that we are focused on. Saying that, she stretches out her hand, allowing me to kiss it. But afterwards, Kaja's outstretched hand was left hanging in midair. That is because I solemnly took a step back, allowing Annie behind me to come forward. Nice to meet you. I am Annie. Annie. Sulphur Mountain City's next city lord. Uncle Wumians says that I should be the one taking to you. With a pleasant smile, Annie greets Kaja and grabs the other party's hand, shaking it with force. In this instant, Kaja, whose body is shaking non-stop from the handshake, stares at me unexpectedly. To the dark elves who view usurping of power and position as a national instinct, she has neglected this puppet little city lord from the very start. She is unable to understand why, despite having advantages in all aspects, did I allow Annie to come forward to represent Sulphur Mountain City. I, who was at the back, solemnly watched everything in front of me, saying something that no one would believe. I don't have much confidence in Annie being able to negotiate anything decent. After all, I only told her to go ahead and negotiate, but I didn't reveal anything to her. I can't accompany you for your whole life. This is training and a test. Good luck, little Annie. HMPH. Lord, you sure have thought everything out lovingly. As expected of a fiancé, your attitude totally different. But, little Annie doesn't seem to be a necrophile. Do you need me to prepare for you your 999th heartbroken consolation party? Stop spreading rumors. Someone will believe it. Also, it isn't the 999th time, it is only the 46th. It hasn't even reached 3 figures. Master, I find it appropriate to remind you that the hearing of those long-eared elves is excellent. Proclaiming your lovelorn record so loudly, all of the matriarchs here can hear it. It seems that some of them are even staring at your lower body. From their looks, it seems that they intend to try a new flavor, the 1000-year virgin chicken. Maybe, after the incident, I can prepare a red packet for you to congratulation you. But, TL, virgin chicken, greater than a pun, could be read as spring chicken but separately, is read as virgin chicken. Saying this, she popped up her glasses as the edges of her mouth curls up, revealing a seemingly sympathetic yet mocking gaze. The meaning of her words was clear. You fellow with only bones, you still want to get a woman? I don't want red packets. I want to revive. After saying these words, someone ran away crying. Then, if you have a physical body, you are willing to be eaten by these old women who are old enough to be your great-great-grandmother? How filthy. A certain maid takes the opportunity to push in a final blow. The chapters seem to be getting longer. It used to be just 3,000 words but now it is taking up to near 5,000. Anyway, if you still don't know who is the blue cat with a pouch, it is Erman, and small light is the flashlight which he uses to shrink people. Took the name from the wiki. Right now the story is progressing a bit slowly but it is slowly building up, gonna become more interesting in the next few chapters. Chapter 39, The Market. This is the proposal from my side. As a part of the Alliance, we hope to be able to obtain the purchase rights of the 30 goods on this list on market price. Also, we hope that elf traders can go in and out freely from your city. In the wide conference room, the extravagance of the elves could be seen by the fact that even their table edges were carved with pictures of elves dancing with a sword. Hearing the negotiation from both parties, I am almost on the verge of falling asleep. Annie will negotiate about the military matters while Margaret will assist her with economic deals. I guess there is nothing much for me here. Since I have nothing to do, then, I might as well look for some joy. Within the list, these 23 commonly seen goods in our market can be sold at market price, but mercury, dragon poison, liquid sulfur that has been worked on and the other of the 7 goods belong to the goods which our officials control or ban its trade, so it isn't allowed to be sold to the outside. Unless, you all agree to an equal trade with the unique goods we have on our list. Also, as long as your dark elf merchants are proper merchant and not assassins or spies wearing the cloak of a merchant, then why would they be afraid of our checks? Propping up her glasses, Elisa replies. Big sister, must you haggle about this little amount of cucumber? Fine, $25, take it all. But, you must take away these tomatoes. Don't worry, they are all fresh goods. Hee hee, little girl, then we shall deal with these one by one. To say the truth, all these trade is just an appetizer to tighten our relationship. Perhaps, we should start talking about the main question now. For example, about that power of law of yours. Kaja smiles and says, hee hee, so young one, let's do it this way. And you don't really care about this little bit of money. Right, how much are you charging for that yellow croaker? This time, Elisa starts to frown but didn't say anything much. Instead, she looks at Annie. You can leave this matter for Annie to settle. If you dark elves are interested in the power of law, you are free to send people to Sulphur Mountain City to learn. But before that, you all must swear in the name of the Spider Queen to not harm the citizens. At the same time, you all must swear to stop your assassination of those dark elves in Sulphur Mountain City. That yellow croaker, if you want it. It's $12 one caddy. I am making it cheap for you. This yellow croaker is fresh from the sea and its taste is fantastic after cooking it. However, if you were to accept this yellow croaker, then you can't fuss about the money I owe over your potato before. TL, 1 caddy equals 600 grams. Hearing Annie's reply, Kaja shakes her head. The will of the Spider Queen cannot be slackened, traitors must be cleared. We elves have all the time to wait, so let those traitors wait patiently for the day they will be terminated. Alright, let's not talk about these unhappy stuffs. Maybe, we can talk about even deeper matters. For example, a military alliance against a certain faction. Of course, it would not be on paper. How can that be? Our canteen's boss is very particular with debts. The money you owe for the potato must be paid in total. But, let's talk about other things. For example, when should we go and beat up that big fatty who always bully people? Of course, if we got found out by the fatty in advance, I won't admit it. Of course, all the previous things discussed were just appetizer. The private military alliance that they were talking about now is the main reason for the secret meeting today. Annie hesitates, but Annie's eyebrows knitted together and her face is full of frost. She seems to be troubled about something. It should be very troubled. Of course she would be very troubled. This decision would determine the future of countless lives. However, it is because of this immense pressure that they will grow up and improve. I have high expectations of you two, Elisa and Annie. Please give me a moment. Finally, she steals her heart, stands up straight and then walks to my front. Master, have you had enough? Can you stop playing those lame vegetable lines in my head? Stop interrupting our discussions. Ah, did I mention it accidentally? Sorry. An apology with no hint of sincerity was said. Then, I lowered my head to reduce my presence. Of course, sarcasm has to have a target, otherwise if I talk to myself, wouldn't that make me a lunatic? Sarcasm, greater than he uses a word to cow? And according to here, it originates from the Japanese word tsukami, which is bringing a point from the other party's word with the intention to tease, and I couldn't find another word for it in English, cause this word appears quite a bit in the novel. Fine, in the eyes of outsiders, Elisa is just standing silently in front of me, staring at me. At the same time, I remain silent, as though passing over the rights to make the decision to the other party. Sorry for the trouble. After apologizing, Elisa returns back to her seat. Actually, what I'm saying isn't that wrong too. Isn't negotiation about haggling and counting every single cent? So is there a difference between it and the market? I am thinking right now, so please be silent. Alright, you all only know how to bully these old bones, then complain that these old bones are getting annoying. Fine, then these old bones will go out to venture around, this will do right. Just nice. I was starting to get tired of the uninteresting atmosphere in the negotiation room, so I stood up and prepared to leave. Please take care and return back to our base early. Don't pick up random things on the street to eat, and don't make too much little children cry, so that their parents won't come knocking on our door. Also, don't get caught while doing bad things. I am not very close with the police station here, and I don't want to go and fetch someone from there. Fine. Hearing the snagging that seems to be directed towards an old child, I started to reflect on exactly where did I go wrong. Back then, the cute little girl who was afraid of dark and loneliness, the girl who comes hugging the corner of my shirt to sleep with me during stormy days, exactly how did she become so venomous and twisted under my education? On my way out, I had to tolerate Elisa's cold glare and pretend not to see the passionate gaze and secret invitations from those elf matriarchs. What a pity, the Dark Elves' adult art and all kinds of techniques are known to be one of the world's precious art collection, and it is the dream of every man. Fine, even without that venomous maid, I still can't do anything much. But it should be okay thinking about it, right? As a man, imagination is not a crime, right? Elisa, can you stop singing in my head gong gong piantatong? I really shouldn't have taught you to sing pop songs back then. Even more so, I shouldn't have told you what a gong gong is. Means eunuch. In the song, there is a line in the chorus that says, in the back court, there are 3,000 beautiful ladies, but none of which he could touch. Wait till I revive. Before I leave, I looked back once more at Annie, who was talking very seriously. I look forward to the day she would able to hold up the fort independently, so that I can collect my reward and revive. Yet, I didn't know that when I left, all of the Dark Elf matriarchs seemed to have heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. That magic robe and mask seems to be all god equipment. I can't detect his true appearance or powers at all. TL, I used to keep translate lore robe and magic robe interchangeably for him, it's all the same robe, because? Kinmean is both the first word for magic and law. I will stick with magic robe. There are totally no changes in his emotions and even his heartbeat can't be felt. If I close my eyes, it is as though he isn't there at all. How the hell does something like this exist? Is it a demon, a human, elf, undead? There is totally no way to find out. The two young girls seem to be very reliant on his judgment, and yet he chose to leave now. Why is that so? Could there be some scheme? From a certain sense, the only thing hindering this negotiation is that Woomians from Dark Elf matriarchs who had lived through countless years, the strong isn't something to fear. What is to fear is always the unknown, and Woomians is just too bizarre and dangerous. As the finder of a new kind of power of order, it is impossible to overestimate him. If the power of law is destined to become a powerful order like the Holy Light, then we might be facing a future god. But no matter what, his departure is a good thing for the negotiation. Or maybe, we should let some shadow follow him, if there's an opportunity. Luciana, the #1 matriarch of Morspblight City. From a certain sense, she is neighbor of Sulphur Mountain City. Even though those eccentric Dark Elves who believed in Holy Light and betrayed the Dark Elves had caused the original First Family to lose the trust and doting of the Spider Queen, it had allowed the Sven family which Luciana belongs to gain power. But no matter what, Diana and the others who had escaped and were living better lives remains the disgrace of Morspblight City. If they do not get rid of this disgrace on time. The Spider Queen was never a reasonable true god. The screams of agony by the previous first matriarch when she was turned into the spider was still etched onto her eyes. But at the same time, Kaja, who was still talking with Annie, gazes at her, as though seeing through her private wishes. If there is a chance, send out a small present to improve our relations with that lord. If we are able to forge an alliance with this rising autarch Sulphur Mountain City, it would be easier for us to fight for the command of the Underground Alliance. This is a big affair that concerns the entire Dark Elf tribe. No one would be so short-sighted to allow their personal desire affect the entire situation. Even though Luciana changed her words fast enough, but when Kaja's gaze continued to remain on her, she felt like her heart was about to stop. Her back was instantly wet with cold sweat. Just having lore-sized blessings isn't enough for Kaja to control over half of the Dark Elf tribe. In the cruel and heartless society of Dark Elves, this high priestess who was always smiling also uses bloodshed to suppress those who goes against her, leaving their bodies cold. Otherwise, for the Dark Elves who see insubordination as an honor, there would be no reason for them to bow to this high leader in name. Then, the present would be prepared personally by you, the noble matriarch of Svan. What we need now is, indeed, a trustworthy ally. Yes, that is my honor. I will make sure to get it done perfect. She already has no longer any energy to bother with the secret laughter of the other matriarchs. Luciana.Sven can only rejoice over surviving this calamity. Then, just to confirm on our mutual communication channels, the alliance of two powers, even if it is an alliance which each of the power have their own goals and aims, they still have many minute details to discuss thoroughly over, so this meeting is destined to take quite long. But, I don't really care, or rather, I don't need to care. Just like what I told Elisa, the discussion between countries and different powers is actually no different from buying vegetables in the market. It is just about how you give me 2 more cents and I will give you additional carrot and potato. When the market prices are fixed, even if your negotiation skills are top-notch, but it is also only a small rise from the price line. To tell the truth, the conclusion of the negotiation is normally determined even before the talks. What that cannot be obtained on the battlefield would normally be unobtainable on the negotiation table. Alright, I know that there are exceptions, so let's not talk about that unbearable history. If the ruler is useless to such an extent, then discussions and fighting are all meaningless. That market price which determines the result of the market trade refers to the circumstances of the two parties before the negotiations, what they have and what kind of bargaining chip do they have to exchange. The side that is more anxious with less bargaining chip would find it harder to gain the initiative to lead the discussions, while the side with more chips on their hand will find it easier to earn more despite giving in less, achieving a bargain. Due to our hard work throughout this period, the initiative in this negotiation is already in the hands of Sulphur Mountain City. Also, Molly and Shu has started made quite a bit of moves while Aim's Turna. And the devils backing him are cunning and fickle, an apparent two-faced faction which cannot be relied on. Also, with the Dark Elf matriarchs who don't know the concept of loyalty behind her back, Kaja should be under intense pressure. I remember that in the original history, 10 years after the epic war where the Underground Alliance started invading the surface, the high leader of the Dark Elf is a Dark Elf matriarch named Victoria. The retirement of an influential Dark Elf is never peaceful and it is impossible for them to retire on their own accord. After all, that often means an ending worse than death. Then, no matter whether it is for her in the Dark Elf power that she represents, she needs an alliance very urgently now. For Sulphur Mountain City, this negotiation and even the invitation to the Underground Alliance, we can totally turn our heads and leave if the negotiations fall through. At least, before that small joke which isn't convenient to tell others and my little tricks get exposed, Sulphur Mountain City has no reason to step into these muddy waters. Since the initiative for the negotiations are in our hands, not mentioning that the other party has requests to ask of us, they have already made up their mind to strike an alliance with Sulphur Mountain City, so the Dark Elves have to ensure that this goes through by hook or by crook. But, my side don't really have to care about the results of the negotiation and we have plentiful of bargaining chips, so no matter how we talk through this negotiation, the final winners will still be us. This is also the reason why I kept refusing to interact with Kaja and Ainsterna. I want to make them panic, worried that I might reconcile with Shu and Molly and instead, cause the internal balance of the alliance to tilt once again. This is also the reason why I say the results of the negotiation is decided even before the negotiation. Also, Alisa's negotiation techniques are above average, there was no trace of her shying out or panicking and that's why I can leave peaceful. At this moment, as I walk on the street of Vance, looking at this other kind of prosperity, I decided to start on my little plan. I, Women's Roland, am not a very forgiving person. Since you all dare to attack Sulphur Mountain City, you all should have thought about my revenge. Shu and Molly, the things that you owe me, it is time to return them now. Chapter 40, Bait. Iron Bloodline, Copper Body, Silver Dignity, Golden Will, Respected Legend, World Saint, Immortal Myth, Indestructible Semigod. The names of these power levels tell a lot. Iron Bloodline is demarcated as LV1 to LV20 in the system. In this period, a large portion of people would have just gotten their job and most of the power they possess now originates from their bloodline. But, it is during this phase that the route they are going to walk on are decided. Sounds a little difficult to understand? Then let's use the system's interface to explain. Below, there are three most commonly seen close-range job of different tribes. Standard Beastman Berserker model / Strength, 15 Agility, 12 Stamina, 12 / Main Attribute, Strength / Race Talent. Berserk Standard Dark Elf Assassin model / Strength, 12 Agility, 14 Stamina, 9 / Main Attribute, Agility / Race Talent. Magic Immunity Skin Standard Human Warrior model / Strength, 12 Agility, 8 Stamina, 10 / Main Attribute, Strength / Race Talent. Non-strength is the total fighting power that a physical body possesses. Agility is the sum of reaction speed and balance. Stamina is the measurement of the health. These are all the most important attributes for close combat jobs. In the Iron Stage, the rookies of different races will work hard towards their ideal physique and through training, they will grow stronger. The supposed god strength just probably means that they are born with 2 additional strength stat. As a result of their hard work, they will grow closer to their ideal physique and when their basic stats reaches a certain mark, they will be able to break through to the next rank. Why? You are complaining that it is unfair. The Beastmen and Dark Elf's summation of all 3 stats are 35 but for the human, it is only 30. And there is no race talent? I'm sorry but the world is never fair. The stats and talents of different races are simply unfair, otherwise why would there be so many arguments and discrimination? If 2 people work hard together, the difference in talent will instead cause their strength to be pulled apart. This is just like comparing a foot soldier to a cavalry. If they are given equal time, the cavalry would have ran much further than the foot soldier. For example, if a normal beastman's strength growth rate is around 0.1 per level, by LV20, their strength would have increased by 2. But, If a human warrior is able to get 1 point growth in strength by LV20, they can already be called a good butt for a strength type warrior. Furthermore, this is not taking into account of their race talents. The race talents of strong tribes tend to be quite frightening. It is a common knowledge for the strength of warriors that are equal rank but of different race to be greatly different. But in exchange, the humans with the worst potential tends to grow the fastest. The stronger a race is, the slower their growth would be. The dragon tribe require at least a century before they can be considered a teenager, and the elves take 200 years to become an adult. For a human, 70 to 80 years is sufficient for them to reach their pinnacle. If we were to use the analogy of a game, the weaker a race is, the less experience it requires to level up. Using myself as an example, comparing with another legend rank, the experience bar of Lich is roughly 3 times of that of a human mage, so retraining is actually quite a pain. However, as the breakthrough for every stage is too difficult, so this advantage actually isn't that great for top tier experts. But, the advantage of humans in mass creation of low-level warriors, otherwise known as cannon fodder, as a mortal race is apparent. Elves of the Silver race is adept at creating a large army of middle-class experts, and while the population of the dragons of the Golden race may be pathetic, but no one dares to underestimate them. If the Iron rank is considered to be the start of the journey and their main goal is to follow on the route that their seniors paved, then for warriors that have reached the stage of Bronze body, they are trying to discover their own talents to improve themselves and forge the perfect body for fighting. To put it in easy to understand gaming terms, trying the best to learn skills, maximize your talents and improve your stats. Silver dignity, at this stage, the physical body has almost reached the limit of mortals, so practitioners start to forge their will and learn battling techniques. By combining both the strength of the spirit and the will, they create their personal battle styles. In gaming terms, the character has started to take shape, but growth of attribute stats is much slower, so relying on growth in stats to become stronger is too difficult. So, they start learning a few big skills to show off. Golden will. Experts at this stage start to combine their talents to search for a path suited for them. If they are able to get themselves a fixed high-tier job and inheritance, then their growth would be even faster. In gaming terms, it means choosing a route for job advancement, step into a new level and start afresh from the very basics. Climbing up the ladder, there is the soul imprint of Legends and Soul World of the Saints, but as I have touched on them before, so I will skip them for now. At this point, I guess there would be someone who have already figured out why Annie is unable to beat Elisa no matter what. Annie is a human. What is remarkable about her is that she has a portion of Phoenix blood in her, making her a mixed blood human. At Gold Pinnacle, despite having no race talent, her main attribute, strength, has already reached 19, a step into the boundaries of a legend rank warrior, which is pretty amazing. Different from other games in foreign worlds, it is hard for the basic stats to grow in this world, but in late game, the difference in all 4 or 5 stats would be exceptionally huge. But her opponent is Elisa, whose race is half demon blessed by the Abyss, and her race talent is Calling of the Abyss. As long as she is willing to return the Calling and demonify, she can receive massive increases in her stats. At her current stage, she is already demonification intermediate stage. Strength plus 12 agility plus 12 stamina plus 12 intelligence plus 12 charm plus 6 will minus 6. Just solely by these additions, Annie is unable to defeat Elisa. As a demon progeny, Elisa's basic strength is 12, and adding another 12 onto that, a mage with enough strength to suppress a warrior is born. If we factor in agility and stamina, she would have an advantage in all aspects. Just like how it is a joke for a monkey to defeat a dinosaur with its martial arts, no matter how powerful are the techniques that one possesses, basic stats are still the primary factor to determine one's strength. That's why Lisa could grab the God Sword with her hands. In addition to those messy martial arts that I imparted her in the close quarter combat that she invented involving martial arts with ice magic, not mentioning a gold pinnacle like Annie, even a legend rank like Xuiti might not be able to win against her. As my prided student, as a close combat mage, Elisa has, undoubtedly, surpassed her master. This is unfair, but compared to Little Red's ancient red dragon's perfect body, complete immunity to poison, plague, and fire. All stats are raised by 30, Elisa's demonification intermediate stage is already considered quite fair. I reckon that even if she were to demonify completely, all of her stats would only be increased by a total of 20 with a massive fall in her will. Of course, there is no such thing as a free lunch in the world. The strength of the abyss of chaos isn't that easy to take. A massive fall in will means that it would become more and more difficult for her to resist the callings and demonification. Eventually, she would turn into a demon completely, and this is the main reason why I banned her from using her Call of the Abyss race talent. Fortunately, by using the contract magic that devils invented, I wrote this line into the work contract between Elisa and me. Before all of her wages are settled, her physical body is banned from using its demonification power instinctively. The devils and demons originate from the river Styx, and the two of them are indubitably mortal enemies. This could be said to be using the power of the river Styx to deal with the callings of the river Styx. It is the only solution I could derive from a problem that has no solution. TL, the entire phrase is thinking of a solution when there's no solution, finding an exit when there is no exit. Magic contracts originate from devils. Maybe, there will be one day when Elisa, like the other demon progenies, would be unable to resist the calling of the abyss from her blood, and just like my dumb brother, she will walk into the gates of the abyss and hell, turning completely into a resident of the underworld. But, I hope that with me in the path, that day could be extended indefinitely, or at least, I would prevent it from happening as long as I am here. Anyway, benefits and detriments always come hand in hand in this world. Just by relying on this half-demon race advantage, Elisa's actual fighting prowess would not lose to any of the other underground city lords' prided legend rank fighting prowess. Elisa is indeed powerful. As a human, Annie is slightly weaker than her. After all, she is just a 19-year-old young lady, albeit possessing the strength of the golden pinnacle that overwhelms most human. However, Adam and I are still unsatisfied. In this underground world where experts could be found everywhere, the underground city lords can only be considered of average standard. Right now, Elisa and Danny are still at Golden Pinnacle, stuck on the step of forging their soul imprints. It is hard for outsiders to help them here, as soul imprints require them to slowly grind it into shape. No matter whether it is from fighting or from life, they need to suffer setbacks and failures to discover their inadequacies, obtaining victories after tough fights to rediscover their talents and confidence. They would require every experience that plays a crucial role in life, and while the both of them have exceptional talent, their basics being knocked into place by Adam and me, but what they mainly lack is experience. The Dark Elves won't be easy to deal with, but with Margaret and Adam, two semi-gods, as your backing, they won't dare to directly touch you all. Good luck, we don't have much time left. Even with this butterfly causing chaos about, the day which the underground world forming an underground alliance to invade the surface won't be too far away. Alright, let's stop with those serious words here. What I am going to do now, if I were to dump it on them, it wouldn't be accumulating experience but outright murder. As I walk solemnly towards Vance City's platinum mortar auction, the sound of chatters could be heard from all locations. But from the moment I walked in, all sound disappeared. Everyone's gaze is directed towards the figure at the entrance. Because, he is simply too bright. The silver light of order and light of lore ripples around the robe. The semi-god mask brings about the stern demeanor as though everything was being judged. A bulky yellow-covered book hanging by the waist was shining with the lines of rule, of the world, that was exclusive to god equipment. The worn-out gavel on the other side was also bursting with the radiance of the power of law. It is apparent that the gavel is, at the very least, a semi-god equipment. A god equipment and 3 semi-god equipment. Even a true god would be tempted. It would be unfathomable if one doesn't get robbed going on like that. In the worst case scenario, the entire underground world might even be involved in the robbery. HMPH, my goal is to blind you all anyway. But even a fool would know that those who are capable of bringing these kinds of equipment out would have extremely hard bones. However, there are always fellows who want to try their luck. In the next instant, 2 thieves who were forced out by their superiors appeared from the shadow and tried to approach me. Incantation of law, judgment. My luck wasn't bad. This unlucky fellow must have done atrocities to be shine red to the point that it was turning black. Thus, incantation of law, capital punishment, hanging. Under a 6-circle death penalty verdict, An intangible rope hangs him in midair, and what is left is the time for the sinner to regret his actions before his legs go limp. Facing this sixth circle incantation of law, gold rank, of the power of law which targets criminals, this pitiful silver rank thief didn't even have the time to cry in agony and walks into the embrace of death directly. Looking at the corpse in front of him, the other unlucky fellow fell limp to the floor, scared to the point he couldn't stop trembling. After all, before he can even react, his old partner has already died somehow in front of him. On top of that, it was quite a brutal death. Everyone was prepared for the little soldiers who was testing the waters to die, but no one expected them to die in such an eerie manner. The emptiness that represents the unknown is always the color which everyone is most wary of. Ignoring the lucky fellow who survived due to not committing any crime in the last few hours, I walked to the front desk of the auction like it was nobody's business, and the path that I walk through splits apart like how Moses splits the ocean. Then, I am here to auction something. A god equipment. Everyone's eyes are on me. The moment that my word rang out, a tsunami seems to have crashed down. The auction hall, which was bizarrely quiet a moment ago, immediately gets drowned in discussions, and shouts of shock could be heard from every corner. Of course they would be shocked and stunned. Putting aside god equipment, a semi-god equipment or even epic equipment in an auction could already cause a fearsome storm that would be etched in history. As for auctioning a god equipment, it is destined to make history. Auction? Fine, fine. You want to auction god equipment? God equipment? God equipment? You sure? The poor center lady's eyes saw stars and started shouting about with a look which says that she was unable to accept reality and an expression that was broken. God equipment. Congratulations to your auction house. This should be first auction for a god equipment in the underground world. Your platinum mortar auction house is destined to leave its name in history. That center lady couldn't care less whether her name would be left in history. When she heard that a god equipment was really going to be auctioned, her eyes flipped and she immediately fell flat on the floor. God equipment equals worth a lot of money equals many people will snatch for it equals if you were to accidentally break it, you can't pay for it in your whole life equals get captured to work as a slave equals get sold in the slave market by some demon with special interests equals forced to do all sorts of things that makes one embarrassed. This is the train of thoughts that floated in Centurania's mind. I don't want to be slave and XXXX. Then, this lass who is rich in imagination immediately faints from her head overheating. This kind of matter of important people is hard on a young lady who is obsessed with dimension traveling novels and just left her farming village 3 months ago. Slave. Who? I am not Bai Feng, I won't have an interest in you. Even I didn't expect to meet such a situation. What is wrong with this lady? Why is her expression so rich with everything appearing in an instant? And she even shouted such a perverted line. But now that the auctioneer has fainted, what should I do? Should I just return? Lord, please hand it over to me. I am the manager here, Carlos. Here is my name card. A goblin who is well dressed rushed out, but looking at his bloodshot eyes and messy clothes, it was apparent that he just received the news and rushed here. The item that you would like to auction, is it this book? Looks like, as the manager of this auction house, Carlos is still pretty good at valuing items to know that the god equipment would be surrounded by the lines of rule representing it. But I shook my head and I snapped my finger. A skeleton soldier walks out from my back with a black colored wooden box in its hand. Then, the box is opened. The next second, the entire hall is radiated with starlight. Carlos even thought that the box contains a star that was just plucked from the sky until the radiance finally scatters. It is a black scepter and its body is dull without any trace of extravagance, full of the dust of history. There are even marks from being burned and frozen. The god equipment's power seems to be hidden internally. The only thing shining on it is silver-colored gems on it. Starlight seems to be jumping from gem to gem, that the light also has its own tempo, as though as it is a living being of its own. Compared the star-like shine of these gems, the expensive inextinguishable lamps lighted with mermaid oil in the auction house feels just like the shabby and worthless candles of the kobolds in comparison. God equipment. It is definitely a god equipment. Are these stars lighting its lines of rule? Wait, it is a scepter. A scepter. Suddenly, Carlos's face steels and the sharp piercing scream of a goblin resounds in the entire hall. Looks like my primary objective has been achieved. As an existence who brings about 3 semi-god equipment and a god equipment with him, if I were to take out another god equipment, most people would subconsciously think that it is real too. Yang I. He forcefully swallows back the rest of his words. He knows how precious the auction item in front of him is, that is at least the worth of an empire. He is already starting to envy that rookie who faints, and was tempted to faint himself and end it all there and then. Yes, Eternal Night Scepter. I heartlessly broke the final hope that he has as I looked playfully at the face of despair of the goblin. Eternal Night Scepter? My voice isn't very loud, but with everyone on the field looking at us, this level of voice is sufficient. Very quickly, the news about Eternal Night Scepter reappearing in the world spreads across the entire hall. A large portion of people were stunned, then they expressed the glee of greediness before turning into fear. Call everyone to gather and leave, something big is going to happen here. Hurry up and leave. Kai isn't willing to go? Fine, then let's go by ourselves, just leave this fool to die here. Even if you manage to gain possession of god equipment, you would need to be alive to utilize it. Going by the rules of the underground world, a fool who possesses a precious treasure without the strength to match up to it would end up dead sooner or later. When the news that the scepter has reappeared spreads out, many top-tier powers will all crowd in. At that time, it would be too late to leave. Of course, there would be fools and those who are willing to give their life for wealth. Many people chose to leave, but there are also a few who remained. But, they were still frightened by how the thief died dearly then, so they were afraid of charging head-on towards those who were vying for it but lacked the courage to. I ignored them totally and instead, I smiled at the goblin who was holding up the scepter, his hands trembling. I only have 2 requests for the auction. The first is that the auction should be held 30 days later. 3 in the afternoon. Every individual and power are allowed to attend. Second, if the auction item disappears, I want you all to compensate me 20 top-tier underground cities. That includes Mahu Oasis, Cloudwater Box, Flying Dragon City in its midst. What? Pay. You underground cities? I don't have underground cities. Mahu, I get it, Lion King. You are aiming for the Lion King. Alright. That pitiful goblin's eyes immediately flipped white and follows in the footsteps of his subordinates. He did point out my goal correctly. Of course I came here for Shu. If I want to start an auction in this city, how can it do without sufficient backing? The backing for this auction house is the beastman sovereign Shu. Nua and the underground cities that I said are all his properties. Hearing the name of the underground arc, a few of the audience suddenly regained their rational thinking and their instinctive fear and chose to leave. At times, knowing too much may also result in death. Hey, feigning again. Is there anyone else who can take charge? All of the workers who meet my gaze either avoid my gaze or just fall down directly, faking their deaths. Haha, isn't this Wumian's? It has been long since we last met. You are here to auction something? Fine, we will accept your deal. A gruff and grand figure walks through the entrance accompanied by resounding laughter. Before the figure even walks in, the sound is already echoing throughout the hall. Exactly the same as how I saw him outside Sulphur Mountain City. The single-eyed old lion has thick hair and his muscles over his body is, unexpectedly, not very exaggerated. The scorpion tail at the back of his head drags on the floor, and that seemingly average black-colored leather armor he wears is actually a legendary armor that is hard to buy with just money itself. At this point, the old scorpion-tailed lion is laughing cheerfully on his domain, seeming to not bother at all about the loss of his soldiers in his overwhelming defeat. Then, hey, old thing, you are still alive. As expected as man who uses his own soldier as his shield. It must be your thick skin that saved your life. To think you still dare to appear in front of me. Aren't you afraid of me killing you directly? Don't reveal one's secret when beating someone, but I deliberately want to aim for all of his weak spots. Instantly, the old lion's face scrunches. TL, saying goes like this: don't aim for the face when beating someone up. Don't aim for the weak spots when you are scolding someone simply means don't go too far. War is an extension of governance. All of the influential figures care about their image, and under normal situations, no matter how intense the secret fights between underground city lords were, but if they were to be seated together in public, they would still spare the other party some face and interact politely. But, meeting an opponent that doesn't spare him any face, it is probably the first time he is seeing someone like that and his face steals immediately. This might be true under normal circumstances. But why should I spare this bastard any face? The old lion tightens his grip on the sword behind his back, but the next instant, he was blinded by my body of god equipment. Shu remembers that forbidden spell that involves the entire city. That formless and majestic eye of the sky, as though as it was prepared to judge everything. Even the Beastman Sovereign felt some fear and couldn't bring up the determination to go all out with me. Lord, the Vance city has a pact against fighting. Realizing the hesitation of his master, a fox beastman dressed in a mage's robe steps forward, as though reminding his master about this city's rules. In reality, he was giving space for his own boss to step down. With someone persuading him, Shu's face gradually relaxes and he releases his grip on the sword's handle. Of course, a neutral city bans fighting, but there are colosseums that allow one to resolve personal grudges. Furthermore, when did these domineering underground autarchs start to follow rules? But the next moment, the surrounding people exclaims in shock. They dare not believe that the invincible Beastman Sovereign would actually take this lying. It can't be that the rumor that the Beastman Sovereign had led an army on an expedition but ended up getting wiped clean in a faraway land is true. Following Shu's style of doing things, to not act up facing other people's ill comments is sufficient to testify the authenticity of the rumors, causing heavy damage to the reputation of this Beastman Sovereign. But, the single eye that gazes at the surrounding made all of the restless people stop in their tracks. Even if this news is false, there is a high possibility of it getting out. If Shu were to mistake them as the one who spread it out, then wouldn't they die wrong? The single-eyed Beastman Sovereign suppresses his anger, but it was impossible for him to continue interacting with this rogue in front of him. Thus, the Fox Beastman, after a meaningful gaze, steps up. Basics in doing business. Everyone that comes knocking is a customer, so we should accept them with smiles on our face, even if the customer is rude. Don't you agree, Lord Wumians? This message doesn't put themselves down, nor does it anger other people. At the same time, it is a verbal attack, yet it is humorous. It is a very apt message. I laughed in reply, getting us past the vicious words I shot out just now. Since he provided an opportunity to alleviate the situation, I might as well take it. Anyway, my goal today is not to fall out with them. That is to say, you all are accepting my auction deal? Accept, of course we are accepting. Fine, then let's sign an agreement using mine. That little fox takes the sheepskin agreement and his face turns wide in an instant. On it, the language of the devils of hell is used instead of the usual common language. This is an agreement belonging to the devils. The agreements on it is just like what I have said. Number 1, the auction is to be held 30 days later. Number 2, if the scepter is lost, 20 cities must be paid to me. The only thing different is that I added another restrictive clause that if none of the two terms are fulfilled, then the person who signed the deal will fall into river Styx, unable to redeem themselves. To humans and Beastman, swearing to the river Styx is no different from swearing to the sun. Anyway, none of it is effective anyway. But to the malevolent gods, demons and devils who live in the underworld, their power and live originate from the river Styx. If they were to go against the promise they made to river Styx, even the Spider Queen Lorsai would be reduced to a tiny little spider. TL, underground world and underworld is different. Underworld, greater than abyss, hell etc. Of course, my message in taking out this contract is clear, that the Beastman Sovereign is demon wearing the cloak of a beastman. The little fox passes the contract quivering to Shu. Then, he was sent flying by the enraged Beastman Sovereign. But as he grasped the contract, he hesitated. The power backing him seems to be extremely interested in this scepter, and if he were to let go of it. If you don't accept the deal, then I will head over to the Black Pearl auction house next door. I made a timely increase in stakes. The Black Pearl auction house is backed by another underground Autarchane's Turna Edura, and the power behind him is the devils. No matter how you see it, from their background or how they were vying to be the leader of the Underground Alliance, Shu and Ain's Turna were destined to be archenemies. If Ain's Turna were to successfully hold the auction and alliance with Sulphur Mountain City, that would make it a 3v1 situation, and Molly isn't completely reliable yet. No, The worst situation is him successfully unlocking the secrets to Eternal Night Scepter within the 30 days. But then, Shu naturally thought that if Vane's Turna could unlock its secret, wouldn't he be able to do the same too? Even if his black shaman subordinates weren't really skilled in this aspect, but he has Lich underlings as well. If that can't do too, he can ask for help from the one behind him. No. If I really to uncover Lord Yong-Ai's secret to his strength, I can become the second Lord Yong-Ai, then would I still need his support? In the face of treasure, countless thoughts were running through his brain, and in the end, they all converged into just one. I'll sign. But before I sign, I want to check the good. Of course. Thus, I tried my best to hold in my laughter. Why? No matter how those mages try to phrase their question, those yes, true is really making me laugh. One of the yes is in English while the other is in Mandarin. While leaving with the signed contract, I threw a message at him. You might regret it. Within my expectations, an angry roar reminiscent of a lion's could be heard from my back. The Beastman Sovereign never regrets. Fine, let me continue to hold in my laughter. That night, I heard that the old lion was confined in his study for an entire night, and he casually killed 7 strategists with the little fox included in the mix, 8 mages and 6 black shamans. When he finally steps out, repeated mumbles of him saying, "Although I have heard the sound of the breathing, how do I activate this?" could be heard. That night, I heard that the old lion suffered numerous attacks at the auction, so he moved to the military barracks. Even so, there were more than 30 attempts at burglary, 5 military mutinies and 4 assaults from other underground city lords. In that night, it is said that most of the underground city lords began to rush to Vance to prepare for the auction 30 days later. Of course, the ones making the move with them is their army. That night, it is said that all of the necromancers and thieves went mad, and the tunnel heading to Vance was filled with all kinds of dangerous personnel. At the same time, someone sent a report that an undead lord coming from the surface was spotted. Rumors has it that in the second day, the old lion's hair turned white overnight, and he looked like he has aged 10 years. As for me, I looked at the sky, which was starting to have traces of white as I waited for morning to come. The wind has finally started blowing, but this is only just the beginning.